Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Jim Cornette Experience. This week, I control the weather. Plus, Louisville got Smackdown, and we're going to investigate a murder most foul Who Killed WCW. And joining me in all this and so much more, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you, the man who solved more wrestling mysteries than Sherlock Holmes and Columbo combined, the great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for another fun week of wrestling talk. I'm actually looking forward to today's show because... Are you hungry? What's going on over there?
I don't have a machine to make an annoying noise like you do, so I'm just trying to...
A machine? A machine? This is a beautiful instrument right here.
A finely tuned organ.
That's right.
Who do you have tune your organ?
It's self-tuning.
Is it the organ tuning, gentlemen?
Boy, the show went to the shitter quick this week. A minute in. A minute. It's your show. You have to save it.
What the
I'll
hell?
talk less this week. I'll save the show.
Oh, yeah, I wish you would. Yeah, we'd have a nice conversation if you'd quit interrupting me. It's like the man who solved more wrestling mysteries than Sherlock and Columbo. Do you remember the old Midnight Express introduction? The men who have won more wrestling matches than Elvis and the Beatles combined.
I did not remember that one. No, that's a good one.
You didn't remember that one? That was, who was it, the record offer in the 80s? Was it Slim Whitman or Zamfir and his pan flute or Boxcar Willie? One of the taglines was... the man who sold more records in like Tunisia or something than the Beatles. It was some bizarre statistic where you could prove that this guy was somebody somewhere, but nobody had ever heard of him. And then they did the record offer and sold like fucking 5 million of these goddamn records. It may have been Slim Whitman. Do you remember Slim Whitman?
I remember him. I remember his voice, of course.
The voice of Slim Whitman.
A slim voice.
It
I used to like the introductions
is.
when you and Stan were just out together and you would introduce Stan. I remember there was one, I can't remember what Lothario you used as the example. You said, here he is, the man who taught Fabio everything he knows, Stan Lane. And then he took the mic and he said, and ladies and gentlemen, the man who taught Pee Wee Herman everything he knows, Jim Cornette.
Well, you know, Pee Wee was a good student. He really had a grip on the subject.
Lean means slick and quick. That was one of the ones used in Mid-South,
Yes.
and I always remembered. Lean means slick and quick.
Twin sons of different mothers. All right, where did we get this from? I was going to tell you my weather story.
Oh, yeah, you were in pain or something.
I was trying to do this because I have found a way to control the weather, Brian. Did you know this?
Is this another one of these things that Hotchkiss has convinced you?
No. But it's very simple. Because for weeks and weeks now, I've been talking, the rain here, the storms, the deluge, the downpour, the toad stranglers. It's just been pouring rain every time you turn around. Sometimes it would rain, you didn't even have to turn around. And I found a way to stop the rain, Brian. I had 15 trees planted in my front yard just this past Monday, and it's rained once in 6 days, and there is no rain in the goddamn forecast for the next 7. So I have, for the first time since like fucking January, the longest stretch we've had with no rain. The last time we had rain, it was snow. And so I've got 2 200-foot garden hoses hooked up to each end of the house. And every morning before it, and also it's going to be in the 90s, hot and dry. So every morning before it gets too oppressive, I got to go out there for an hour and water these goddamn trees.
Can you use a sprinkler?
No, because okay, if you put a sprinkler out, right, it sprays within a particular area, right?
Well, you could isolate what the area is, but yeah.
Well, but you can't make it an area that's 100 feet long and 10 feet wide because they're all planted. My front fence, the car magnet that attracts cars, my front fence. Well, now that across the street from me used to be 30 acres of woods that my neighborhood deer lived and frolicked in, and you could see the birds and the trees and the flowers and the trees and the skies up above in the shadow of love. Anyway, and it was just a big green wall, right? And in the wintertime, the trees would lose their leaves, but since it was 30 acres of forest, you could just see more fucking birds. Well, now, even though there's about a 100-foot wide strip of trees across the road from me, when we lose the leaves in the wintertime, I can see the backyards of all those peoples in the subdivision. And I'm tired of looking at this one guy's neon fluorescent orange, green, purple child's play area thing. It makes Harley bark. Every November, she starts barking at this thing when she's looking out the front door. So anyway, I planted about 8 green giants and a couple of Norway spruces. Green giant. No, they're the big 8-foot bad boys. They had to truck them in from Clarksville, Tennessee to get them 8 feet tall.
How wide are they?
Well, they're very wide, and they get even wider. They get big as shit. And right now, they're fat and plump, but they're going to get much bigger, and I won't have to look across. And I put some on the side where I lost my maple, and the other maple kind of fucking part of it broke out, and the neighbor's big 50-foot fucking evergreen tree fell over. Is getting sparse over there, so I put 4 or 5 down the side. So it's a very large area to do the sprinkler thing, and because of the way it's shaped. And I put in a willow oak. A willow oak. They're supposed to be very nice shade trees someday in the future if I live to be 85.
You better water willow, water willow, water willow.
Don't steal my shit and then sing it off.
Steal your shit. It wasn't your shit. There's a real song. Tit willow.
Well, I made it famous.
Made it famous.
I made it famous, but you sang it off key.
What key do you sing it in?
Water willow, water willow, water willow.
You're right. I wasn't going to hit that key. You're right.
No, you can't hit that note. But anyway, so now again, 90 degrees plus, no rain in the fucking forecast. Drive by early in the morning, you'll see Cornette sitting out there with a fucking hose. But I've already yesterday, I'll have you know, because I've got the big onslaught of action figure signing coming up. More on that here shortly. But I'm a little peaked today because yesterday I decided the last day I'll be able to take off this month. It was a Saturday. The weather was decent. It sprinkled rain, not enough to help my trees for a few minutes. But I had the Monroes over. They brought in another 3 tons of creek stone, unloaded that, worked some more on my fire pit, my stone bench, and my patio, and my mulch circle around the maple tree in the back. And Brian, I got the pole saw out. My first time, it's already June, and it's first time I've been able to get the pole saw out. Hadn't had time.
Is this the thing that used to have on the limb lopper?
Well, the limb lopper is for the stuff you can reach on the ground.
Oh, I thought this was an attachment to it. This is something different.
No, there's a limb lopper and there's a pole saw. But the pole saw does have a lopping attachment if you pull the rope. But sometimes if it's too big, you got to just sit there and saw the son of a bitch. What are you laughing about?
All of this and none of this. I don't know the detail, the exquisite detail without any sense of humor being applied to it is pretty interesting.
Well, yes, because I'm telling you yesterday was my first day with the pole saw.
But not the limb lopper.
Well, no, I had the limb lopper too. But I've had the limb lopper a time or two because it's easier on me than the pole saw. Because I get that pole saw, I telescope that son of a bitch to about 20 feet and stick that up there. And that'll do a number on your shoulders and your neck. potentially all the way down into your groin. That's why I feel like I've been beaten with a sack of wet hammers today. I can't.
From working out.
Don't piss me off because I can't get mad. It hurts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's have a fun day here on the show.
So it's just my neck and my shoulders and my back and my hip and my right knee.
Just that.
And my wee knee. And I got the arthritis in a couple fingers in my left hand. You know, Arthur, he's the meanest one of them itis boys.
What about Ginger? As if that's a name.
Gingiv.
Yes.
Gingiv. She's the sister of Arthur and Burse.
All right.
Anyway, so I was going into the figures update where again, the cult of Cornette came through. I mentioned this on the drive-through last week, but came through for the WHAS Crusade for Children. The bloody variants sold out the first day. I believe now the raw variants, they're about 20, 30. I don't even know. I haven't talked to Hotchkiss. But also between those that were sold, that's $4,000. I kicked in an extra $1,000. Jeremy Bagley not only kicked in an extra $500, but also bought a figure for a fan that he chose at random on the interweb somewhere. John Fell kicked in a nice contribution because he had all the figures anyway. So it's been about $6,000 or a little bit more now that this effort has raised that we know of for the crusade. So we appreciate that. And for those of you who have sent me money, the first 100 packages will be in the hands of the Feather Bottoms by this coming weekend, Friday the 14th, to be mailed out to the awaiting customers. And there's still so much more available at JimCornette.com. Please go there and buy these things now, but you're going to wait a few weeks for them because we're going to try to process these as quickly as possible.
Hey, I went to see if the rodeo was on again.
Oh, for God's sake.
It's not on. There's a different show in the time slot. I wonder if that was just like a big event or something. World of Outlaws, the dirt road to stardom.
Well, maybe the rodeo did something bad and lost their television.
Follow the adrenaline-fueled journey of young up-and-coming racers in the Extreme Outlaw Midget Series.
What? Now, wait, what?
Seasoned veterans of the world's premier dirt racing series, the World of Outlaws.
So it's midgets racing bicycle or motorcycle, or what is it now?
No, they're sprint cars. Is that what this says? Sprint cars. Because every one of these people they keep showing on here, they're not wearing cowboy hats, unlike the people last week. Every person here...
But it's midgets driving cars, then.
Well, no one looks like a midget. I mean, the car looks like it could be...
Well, you said midget.
They said what? Midget.
Well, then where's the fucking midgets?
Donnie Shantz, 10-time World of Outlaws sprint car champion. He's not a midget, though. Or a little person, as we're... They said midget.
Well, they said midget. That's why I'm looking for the midget. Well, I'm not looking for anything. I don't know what you're looking at, but you can't find me my midgets.
Dirt racing. Dirt car racing.
Dirt racing.
Dirt road to stardom. This is dirt racing series. That is what it is. Dirt racing. The world's premier dirt racing series, by the way.
Where do you sit to watch people race in dirt?
A racetrack.
Do you have to sit in dirt?
Well, they're at a racetrack, and there's a, instead of horses running around in dirt, there's just cars driving in dirt.
Well, Jesus Christ, wouldn't they also be driving around in a lot of horse shit if they're on a racetrack?
So I don't understand. The rodeo last week, was that like a big deal? Because the fact that it's not on this week, it's not like, okay, we'll see you next week for more rodeo action. Was that like a season-ending thing? Is that? That's
well. Can you Google if rodeos have seasons? I guess at some point it gets too cold to sit out there and watch those fucking bulls maul these people.
That's so weird. If that was like their last thing and it was a big event and it aired at like noon.
Well, no, I get you can do it. You can do it indoors too, though, can't you?
Yeah, well, that one was indoors. This one's outdoors.
Yeah, so this could be year round. I'm just thinking, what would it fucking smell like by the time that they were finished with that show? Because you got to think that bull is expending so much energy to throw those motherfuckers off. You would have to think there was some type of involuntarily bowel action.
You know what I would like to know?
Going on.
Well, this is interesting because, I mean, this is on CBS right now, and last week's rodeo was on CBS, and I don't know what kind of numbers these
CBS is showing people racing in dirt?
Well, that's my question. This is on CBS here in New York. Is this a buy? Is this something that only certain stations are airing right now? Is this something coming out of corporate? Is this a national broadcast? I don't know anything about this, but, you know, just thinking about TV rights and everything and the value of different things, wrestling still can't get on, but these shows are on here. That's why I'm wondering, is this syndicated? Seriously, it's just people driving in dirt. We can't get wrestling on CBS at noon? Last week, it was women throwing a rope around a horse that ran away with the rope. And this week, it's people driving in dirt. Where's the pro wrestling?
You would think with a loyal an audience as wrestling has that it could outrate racing in dirt.
Yeah, I don't even know how many people were there last time, too, because it was like kind of dark. And once they make the crowd dark, you're thinking, like, oh, AEW, there's no one there. Like the WNBA, when Caitlin Clark's not in town, when it's just an average game, the lights are dim because there's nobody there. So what's
the crowd for the dirt racing here?
Well, right now they're doing a aerial shot of all the trucks and trailers with all the Extreme Outlaw this is the Extreme Outlaw midget announcer.
So the announcer's a midget.
He's not a midget either. Why
are they calling him a fucking midget then?
I guess the cars, I mean, these are uniquely styled dirt racing cars. Well, maybe they're not unique to the dirt racing world. They're unique to people
What are you babbling about? What is a uniquely styled dirt racing car?
It's small and it's, now they're just showing them like going off the track and going sideways.
So the cars are midgets.
I guess the cars are midgets.
Can they just come out and say that, or shouldn't they be calling them little autos?
I mean, there are plenty of empty seats now that they show the crowd with the cars racing as fast as they can around it. There are plenty of empty seats.
Well, now, how many people would you think this venue would hold here where they are?
I don't know. It's an outdoor racetrack, but it's kind of like Congress. You see someone standing up there giving a speech, like, wow, he's giving a big speech. Then you're like, oh, there's no one there. The cameras don't show you that. C-SPAN only shows you the congressman. You don't see that there's no one there.
Well, if they had an aerial shot, where are they? Have they ID'd this thing? Can we Google this? Now you got me wondering.
Well, I have it on mute, so we're going to have to Google it. World of Outlaws Dirt Road to Stardom. Mom, you're never going to believe it. I made the Dirt Road to Stardom.
And she thought, well, I'm glad to hear it, because all along I thought it'd be the Hershey Highway. But so if they have this venue, this racetrack, where are they? Just out in the middle of goddamn Montana somewhere? Are they in a major city? How would you get that much real estate in a major city where they could just drive?
Oh, what says here that the head of the company recently left and he started a new group, World of Outlaws, the Dirt Road to Marigold. No, let's see. Here I have something from the World of Outlaws website published June 1st, so this is recent. The path to the World of Outlaws will be showcased on CBS with a new 1-hour special on Sunday, June 9th. That's, as we are recording, hate to spoil it for anyone. In the documentary-style show, the latter system of going from racing dirt midgets to 410 sprint cars. I wasn't sure if it was Spirit or Sprint. I had to lean in. Sprint cars will be highlighted with a focus on the World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series and Extreme Outlaw Midget Series, presented by Toyota from the April Wildcat Showdown event at US 36 Raceway. Where the fuck is that?
Lots of words. US 36 Raceway. I'm making notes on this. See, I told everybody you were a detective.
Osborne, Missouri.
Osborne, Missouri, a major metro. It's St. Louis, Kansas City, and then Osborne, right, in terms of population. Where is Osborne? Hold on.
And they got Toyota. Again, to my point, wrestling can't get on CBS on noon on a Sunday, but these guys can, driving around in dirt with Toyota as the sponsor.
Well, hold on. You know what I got, don't you?
I'm afraid. What do you got?
Missouri.
Oh, the Atlas.
Yeah, well, hold on. I've got to go to the
Rowan
back.
and Martin Atlas?
No, the Rand McNally, I'll have you know.
That's what I meant.
I got to go to the back for the index. One moment, please. Missouri. What was that name again?
Osborne, Missouri.
Osborne, Missouri. See, the type is so small. I used to, when I had good eyesight, I could see it. Jesus Christ.
What type of grandstands does US 36 Raceway have?
No, wait, no. It's not even in the Rand McNally town index, and they have towns in here of fucking 2,000 people. Google Osborne, Missouri. Where are these people? What kind of outlaw bullshit? This is an outlaw mud show.
Osborne.
When it rains, there you go.
Is a city in northern Clinton in southern DeKalb County in the U.S. state of Missouri. The population was 374 in the 2020 census.
You fucking rip. What is this? 374, and they've got a raceway, and it's on CBS right now. And Tony Khan can't get on CBS.
Wow.
I can understand if the WWE's on Fox, for fuck's sake. They can't be on CBS. They can't have their Kate and Edith too. But where is this off-brand fucking metropolis in the scheme of things in the state of Missouri?
Well, hold on. I just want to say, I'm looking at their schedule here. They're going to be on CBS June 23rd, July 7th, July 21st, August 4th, August 18th, September 1st, 15th, 29th, October 13th, 27th.
Oh, Jesus.
They're into December with this for the World Finals in December.
Does it all come from Osborne?
I don't know. This is from the Highland Speedway. This is from the Atomic Speedway. Where the fuck is that? Hold on.
Okay, well, I was about to get on that.
Here's one from Jacksonville.
But
the Atomic Speedway, Chillicothe, Ohio.
Chillicothe, Bobby Fulton's promoting it. That son of a bitch will sell out if Bobby Fulton's promoting it. So they're just starting over in Osborne. They're starting small, and they're branching out to metropolises like Chillicothe and Wartburg.
Well, we'll stay on top of this, the weird programming that airs as we record this show.
Gee, please quit watching television. I got a quick update, and then we're going to talk about a story that I thought of when you did something, if that's clear enough for you. But first, we got an email from Steven, and I don't know whether I ought to give his last name or not, because I'm revealing part of his health history here. But he says, "Hi, Jim and Brian, I guess, too, LOL. After listening to your harrowing story involving a tick a few weeks ago, I thought I would share with you my story with the little bastards. And you'll recall I suffered a near-death experience and a major surgical procedure at a local medical facility here several weeks ago because of a assuredly infected tick. It was spreading some type of disease. You remember that, Brian. We talked about it on the show.
Yes, I do.
Well, and fortunately, I was able to pull through, but still, if you're concerned for my welfare, you can send gift cakes for my recuperation and recumbrance. But anyway, Stephen continues, I grew up in Western Maryland, outside Cumberland, off Interstate 68. He said, you take that exit, turn left, go 4 blocks, turn right at the light where the Wawa is. No, I'm kidding. He's just oddly specific, right? In the fall, it was customary to play in the leaves. And I mean, you did that, right? Well, I guess you'd have to play in sewage. You were a New York kid, weren't you?
I lived on Long Island. I lived on the beach. And yeah, we played in the leaves. Of course, every kid does.
Well, yes. You pile them up and you do the big splash into them.
Now I'm disgusted by it. When my kids do it, I'm like, oh my God, the fucking bugs and all this shit. But I didn't care when I was a kid.
But what children are immune, apparently. But maybe not. Listen to what Stephen has to say. After playing one night during my 4th grade year in late 1992, I got some kind of boil on my back. And we tried all the remedies. Eventually, the boil subsided. We thought it may be a tick, but we never saw its body or head. However, that was just the beginning. Every month or so, I kept getting what the doctor called a sinus infection, but I never would get any better. I kept getting sick and losing weight enough that the doctor was afraid. During one visit, my mom went to the bathroom and the doctor came in and said they were admitting me to the hospital to figure out what was wrong with me. Now, get this fucking scene. But he also said when my mom came back, I had to tell her they said I was going to be admitted into the hospital. So this is whatever fucking doctor they have seen waits till the adult, the parent or guardian leaves the room to go take a shit and then comes in and tells the fourth grader, yeah, we're putting your ass to fucking hospital. We're not sure you're going to make it or not.
That's crazy.
And then now I've got to go do some other shit. Let your mom know when he comes back in. What the fuck? Anyway, for the next 7 days, I was poked and prodded with needles for every blood test imaginable. Imaginable. And this was during the blizzard of 1993. And we all remember that. Well, many of you don't because you weren't fucking born yet. I was tested for every random disease you could, including AIDS, a fourth grader. Everything came back negative. As a last-ditch effort, my doctor ordered tests for tick-related illness, and wouldn't you know who won the pony? Rocky Mountain spotted fever, a place I've never been. Stephen, I think as you found out, you can get the Rocky Mountain spotted, like the Spanish flu, which incidentally didn't apparently come from Spain. But, you can get it if you live in Cleveland. We think it was from ticks who hitched a ride on pallets my dad had lying around his work. Or maybe from the ticks that hitched a ride on the fucking birds that flew and the fish that swam, or all the other little creatures. So anyway, Stephen is hot because he missed a whole snowstorm because of the fucking ticks. The big blizzard, the big snowfall, the big bomb.
In 93.
In 93.
That was the end of that story?
That was the end of the story. He missed the big snowfall because he was sick with the spotted fever.
Well,
couldn't get out there and frolic in the snow like the other kids. He couldn't play their reindeer games. I feel like Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon when the monologue is not going well.
Hey, I found a letter the other day.
Well, good. Can you deliver it to whoever it was intended for?
I found this. I was going through my files, and I bumped into this, and I said, you know what? I want to read this to Jim, and I'll do it on the air. I'll bump into the mic. I'll do everything Jace hates right now. The date, December 16th, 1996. This is a response to me. Hello, Brian. Many thanks for your interest. I met my wife on Long Beach, New York in 1946, and I came from England to wrestle in New York. She lived on Merle Avenue, Rockville Center. Leonora Marie Adeline Caracciolo.
Good Lord.
We were married February 22nd, 1947, St. Anthony's Church, Oceanside, Long Island. 50th anniversary coming up in 1997. All the best for the holidays. Tally-ho, Lord James Blears.
That's incredible.
And it has a sticker at the top, Lord James Blears, President, Pacific Wrestling Federation, with his Hawaii address. And it's on Tokyo Hotel stationery.
And wasn't it at pretty much the exact same time or same tour that Paul Bosch was involved in getting Helen and Stu together?
Paul Bosch grew up in Long Beach, my hometown. And he was the chief of lifeguards while also wrestling in New York. He had already been a wrestler. He had already, done a lot of things. And he was now the head of lifeguards. And while other guys, I want to say they were roommates. I want to say it was like Sandor Szabo and Stu Hart and Lord James Blears. He brought them out to Long Beach, and that's where Stu met Helen. He introduced them. And actually, there's a book. What are the names of those books? Like the little photo history books they put out. It's a whole series. I mean, thousands of them at this point. You sent me one once about Louisville television history after.
Okay. Well, I see you had to be a little bit more specific there. What are those books they did? They're in a lot of grocery stores and Walgreens, drugstores on the rack. And there's a company that apparently, because I've seen for many different markets, they do local histories of just small books, but with a lot of pictures of the history of a town's restaurants or the history of a fucking town's television stations and radio stations and local personalities or whatever. And I sent one of those because it had Randy Atcher in it, but that's the flavor of the book.
Maybe not Sandor Zalom. It was a Sandor Kovacs. Someone I forget.
I think it was Kovacs.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking about the age and everything. But in one of those books, the one for Long Beach, New York, they have photos of Paul Bosch when he was the head of lifeguards with his brother-in-law, Burkholz, who was the father of Peter Burkholz. And they also have the Smith girls, because there was a bunch of sisters, including Helen Smith. And it's weird when not weird, but it's cool when you see, Paul Bosch is the head of lifeguards teaching CPR to Helen Hart on the beach in Long Beach.
I wonder if he refrained from sticking his tongue down her throat. Oh, I'm sorry. I've gone too far.
You've gone way too far for no good reason at all.
But so what was it about the women of Long Beach that were attracting all these wrestlers to start all these various promotional dynasties?
Lord Blears' woman he met in Rockville Center. It's Long Island. Listen, anyone from Long Island, there are some amazing women on Long Island. There's some fine women, some great women, smart women. Long Island's awesome for women. I'm missing Long Island as we're talking. I'm hitting my hand.
That's why they banished you.
They didn't banish me. I banished myself.
Okay, answer me a question. Rockville Center.
Oh.
Of course. Well,
the worst parking. The worst parking.
But hold on. Of course, because of the address for the, as they were fondly known, the Apter magazines, but the London publishing group that had all the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestler Inside Wrestling, on and on. That was Rockville Center, right?
That's correct. Because, when I was a kid, whenever I went there, because there was a movie theater, the Fantasy, and different restaurants, different things.
The Fantasy movie theater. You were going there as a little kid?
It wasn't a dirty theater. It sounds like it should be, but no, I saw a lot of films there.
And then you stopped over at the Black Pussy Cafe.
But when you would go to Rockville Center, wherever you were, I was always thinking, like, where is PWI? Like, where could they be? These are the only offices here. You don't realize they're in his house.
Well, that's what I was about to say, because when I'm a 17-year-old boy photographer, right? And I'm getting and sending correspondence and pictures, getting checks from Rockville Center, New York. I envisioned it as Rockefeller Center. I thought these motherfuckers have these giant offices in these major fucking buildings. This is New York, right? And then I found out that Rockville Center is not exactly a business metropolis for publishing and national concerns and things like that, are they?
It's a business metropolis for the town. It's the worst place to park. They would ticket everyone. They had meters everywhere. If it ran out for a second, you would get a ticket. I went in there because I would always fight any of these things. Okay, you want to try to get me? You're going to have to try to get me. And I would go in there, plead not guilty. You get to argue your case before the judge. I've never seen as many people in a courtroom waiting to do the same thing. It was just a business. They negotiate you right down. Okay, we'll say you had a broken taillight. We'll give you a $50 fine plus, $35 for the town.
So wait a minute. So you're being able to fucking negotiate the goddamn, not only the fine, but the offense?
Yeah, you've never done that?
What the fuck? Well, wait a minute.
Again, we're talking traffic court. The prosecutor pulls you aside. He goes, okay,
I've never been to fucking traffic court.
Oh, yeah, everything's a negotiation. And if you live near the person and they know you at all, then you're really good.
But how if you've like reckless driving and he nearly vehicular homicide or whatever? Oh, but we'll just say he had a broken tail light and it paid the fine. What the?
There was no homicide. We're talking parking issues. We're talking running red lights.
Well, are you allowed
chasing
to just,
people?
Are you allowed to just verbally say, okay, we'll make it a different offense so you pay a less fine? And,
Well, if the guy's in front of you and he's saying, well, here's what we could do. I can make it this. You'll get no points. And, there'll be no fine. We don't have to report it to the insurance company. I mean, that sounds actually like a good deal. I'd probably take that deal. But sometimes you have to work with the person. And if you know what you're doing and you have no record, you can usually do it.
I have never been to traffic court
but
in
not
my
Rockville
life.
Center. Rockville Center was going to go for every fucking dollar they could. That was the most corrupt fucking local court. I was in all those traffic courts in Long Island. That was the most corrupt fucking traffic court. It was all so systematic, the problems there.
Apparently, you're still smarting and chapped in the ass from it. To have that much venom here all these years later, but meanwhile, see, I looked at it as a business transaction. Brian, the traffic offense. I've only gotten the one parking ticket in my life where I got like 7 in one morning and then they towed the rental car in New York after WrestleMania 10. I believe we've told that story. That's the only parking ticket I've ever gotten. All of my traffic offenses have been basically speeding tickets. And I consider that a cost of doing business and or a contribution to my comfort. Because over a 600-mile drive, especially back in the 80s when they had the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit for whatever reason nationally for the oil crisis or whatever the fucking deal was, if you're doing 65 or 70, you're going to be in the car at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours less over the course of that trip. So you're playing the lottery. Am I going to win and get there quicker and get out of this fucking car? Or am I going to lose and get a ticket and then still drive the rest of the way the same speed, but you've delayed the time that you get the ticket?
But when you're dealing with points on your license, that's when you got to make the decision to treat it with some urgency and try to negotiate that shit down.
Let me tell you, so that's where you need to find the loophole, baby. And I will admit many of my vehicular speeding offenses were before all these fancy Dan space age computers they've got these days. But do you know how many speeding tickets I had in the year 1984 alone?
84 Mid-South, and you weren't even driving all the time.
Correct.
I don't know.
Take a guess there, Ed McMahon.
5.
13. 13, baby. But
ever in the same place twice?
Well, I'll get to that. But they were in Louisiana, mostly. Couple in Texas. I think one in Oklahoma. Although they didn't have cops, there was no traffic on the roads in Oklahoma back then. But because I paid them and paid them promptly and never contested anything, I had my Kentucky license. See, here's another factoid about Jim Cornette. Now that the statute of limitations, as they say, has probably run out on whatever this might be offensively, I've never had any other driver's license than a Kentucky license. No matter where I've lived or where I've gone in the wrestling business, I never changed my driver's license because I always used my mom's address. So all those tickets I was getting in Louisiana, Texas, etc., they had no reason. There was no computer system. They didn't have that fucking shit back then. And there was no reason for them to track me down from Kentucky to try to get their money because I paid it as quick as I got it. And Kentucky never fucking knew. Dallas, Texas, same thing. Charlotte, North Carolina. I had my driver's license suspended in North Carolina, even though it was a Kentucky license. They could actually do that.
What year?
86 probably, or 7, one of the two of those. Because they could send you a letter saying, even though you have an out-of-state license, your driving privileges in North Carolina are revoked. So, because of tickets, right? Even because they had them in the state. And I won't even digress into the long, boring story of the one cop that pulled me and Bubba over one night in just a random fucking driver's license check and became an asshole about my driver's license. But nevertheless, and then what we do is one of the other boys would just drive to the state line or whatever. But point being, I would get regularly in those days because think about it. If you are driving a minimum of 30 to 40,000 miles. You're plus riding that many more with a couple more guys. You know, you're going to get to, and we're constantly in a rush somewhere. In Smoky Mountain, we went up Highway 23 to a lot of the towns, Paintsville, Pikeville, fucking, oh, goddamn, all the way to Ashland. You know, all that corridor there is the main highway to get up and down in eastern Kentucky. And so one day, goddamn, taking off, going to Paintsville probably. Woo, me and Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, get pulled over on, and that was the 2-lane part, because it wasn't all 4-lane in those days like it is now. So you 2-lane through every goddamn little town. And anyway, I get pulled over, I get a ticket. Me and Hildebrand in my car. And we go on to make the town, and the next week we're going to another town. Maybe that was fucking Pikeville or whatever. Or Barberville. No, Barberville's the other way. Anyway, we get pulled over at the same place. I'm in a car with Hildebrand. I'm going the same speed, and it's the same fucking cop. He said, haven't I seen you before? I said, yeah, I think we met here last week. And there was a time I got 2 tickets in the same 200-mile trip.
Oh.
But I think Troy Graham had the record. One night from Memphis to Louisville, he left after the matches. He was driving overnight to get in at daybreak. He got 3 tickets in between Memphis and Louisville. But he got there in like fucking 4.5 hours. It's 400 miles.
What territory had the best reputation for being able to help guys get out of tickets? With the most influence with the, local courts?
No, the Carolinas. Because you would meet a prick cop, which I did there that one time, but especially in the 70s when it was, what?
You referenced it twice now. What happened with you and Bubba and the prick cop?
Oh, they're doing the license check, right? And okay, well, we're not speeding. We're going through a neighborhood. And so, boom, I give him my license. Oh, you're from out of town, but I had bought my car there, and I had North Carolina plates. And he said, well, you got North Carolina plates. I said, I'm with Jim Crockett Promotions. I live in Kentucky, but I have a home here because we're based here. Trying to sell. Well, then you got to get your license here. I said, but the problem is I have a car, this was true. I have a car in Kentucky and a home in Kentucky. So when I'm in Kentucky driving that car, then I'd have to have my Kentucky license. Oh, you can't have 2 driver's licenses. Well, then what would they say to me if I have a North Carolina license? Driving my Kentucky car. And that's when he turned me in for something, and they found out I'd had the tickets, and they revoked my driving privileges. But anyway, back to the fucking, where were we going back to? Oh, the Carolinas.
Yeah, getting out of tickets.
Especially in the 70s when it was everybody, all the cops knew the boys because they were all driving. Nobody was flying except the occasional private plane, as we know. It wasn't that they hadn't expanded to other territories yet. So it was the same cops in the same towns that some of the cops worked the matches, and they'd say, yeah, here comes the Briscoes. They're doing 90. And they'd flash them the fucking lights and have to slow down a little bit through town here. Or if they did pull the guys over, I did this 3 times. The cop sat me in the front seat, and he said, well, you're going 74 and a 60 or whatever, but we've got some of these buttons we're selling for the children's whatever the fuck right there in the glove compartment in front of you. I said, well, how many of those son of a bitches do you have? I'll just hear you. And then I'd buy the fucking, and it was legitimate. It was a kid's charity thing they were doing, but because it was the boys, they knew the wrestlers, they're fucking flying through here all the time, but they barely ever get in a fucking wreck. It's these other fucking civilians we got to worry about. And, it would be easier to get. I've never gotten out of so many tickets in any geographical area except the Carolinas, because they maybe wrote me once out of every 3 times I got stopped.
See, in New York, we have PBA cards, and I didn't realize until recently that that's not a thing everywhere. I was talking to someone in Washington State who's a police officer, and I was telling him, I was like, oh, do you guys have PBA cards? He's like, what? And I explained how they worked, and he's like, what? You know what a PBA card is?
I have no idea. I thought it was the Pro Bowlers Association. I thought the bowlers were big up there.
No, the Policemen's Benevolent Association. And basically a cop, a police officer, and it could be anyone from, the guy in the corner to a captain or above, gives you this PBA card. And if you get pulled over for something that's not crazy, when you give over your license and your insurance and your registration, you're supposed to give over the PBA card, and it tells the police officer that's pulling you over, this man is a friend of the police in some fashion. I'll let him slide for this one time. So that's the PBA card system up here.
Well, this was more like they're the local celebrities, exception that, and every once in a while, a guy that's helped me sell ad time on OVW here in Louisville in a previous generation had been a DJ at the Old Toy Tiger Lounge here in Louisville and did a show in Bowling Green at the same time. And somebody politically connected with, I guess, Warren County and Bowling Green would get him a police escort so they could drive 100 miles an hour so he could make both late shows and do his thing that he did with that's where they had the wet t-shirt contest back in those days. It was rip-roaring Sodom and Gomorrah. But with the boys, especially in the Carolinas, you could get by. A lot of the cops knew the guys because they'd stopped them so many times and they'd recognize the cars and shit. But guys had different methods of dealing with it. And it also, a lot of times, it depended on how you came off, with the first interaction. Like Sam Bass, Jerry Lawler's manager, who got killed in a car wreck on I-40. He'd like, if you're going to write me a ticket, boy, you can't write anything I can't pay. Like, he'd do the big shot thing, right? Ernie Ladd, of all people, this was a game he told me this story one night in Louisiana, some locker room. I've never laughed so hard because he acted it out and everything. And it took 15 minutes. But he would make a game out of it. And those roads down there, the Mid-South Territory, he was driving as fast as everybody, right? But can you imagine a cop in the 70s and early 80s? And remember, Ernie had gone to college at Grambling, which was in Louisiana. So all those decades, the cops pull this car over and out gets this 6'9", 325-pound black man in the middle of the night, possibly, whatever. But he made a game of it in later years in Mid-South. They pull him over. And again, today, you stay in your car, put your hands on a steering wheel or whatever. Back then, if you got pulled over on the side of the road, it was a thing that was accepted that you would stand up and get out and be in the headlights where they could see you. And also, that's why the boys did it a lot, because they didn't want the cop. Sometimes if you could talk them out of it, the cop would even come and look in the car where they might see, 47 beer cans if it's the Freebirds, right? Whatever. Ernie would give them every pitch in the world to see which one would work. First, he would talk about his background at Grambling University and his pro football career and the Houston Oilers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm number 99. If that did you understand that I was the most publicized black athlete in the United States the year before Muhammad Ali won the gold medal? Do you understand? And then when he would get out, and he'd be walking on the side of the road, and Ernie's knees in the later years looked like grapes on a toothpick. He'd had so many surgeries, and it looked and it probably was painful. And the way he was walking bent-legged anyway. And he would start talking about his knee and just said, my knee is hurting so bad. You can see all the surgeries. I was just trying to get to my hotel room so I could get some some peace and some comfort. And one time he said he even took a fucking bump in the ditch from his bad knee to sell it and had the cop helping him out of the goddamn ditch, right? And then finally, and I can't tell it like Ernie did. Believe me, I can't tell it like Ernie did. But his last resort go-to was he would just look with that hangdog face and he'd say, "Officer, tell the truth. You just want to give a poor N-word a ticket." And oh, no, sir, it's not like that at all. and he would see, and he went time after time after time that he didn't get written up. He had an entire stock of routines that he would act them all out on the side of the road.
Was he a great guy in the locker room?
Yes, it was tremendous. But I mean, he could be, he would laugh with guys and he could be funny, but he was also kind of like maybe the Undertaker of the day in the locker room, where everybody looked up to the big man who could be serious and dispense some fucking wisdom, right? That and he would just sometimes make suggestions to people. Just all of a sudden, even in a conversation that he might not have been engaging in, but we're all sitting in the same fucking room or whatever, right? But everybody could hear what you were saying, and he would just pipe in with a statement like, if it was a hair man, let them pluck your head like an egg. Or if again, they're trying to get the new heel over. That's where you heard. How would he start? Oh, he'd say, "Waltz him across Texas. Get your heat on him. Beat him like he owes you money. Give him his come back to the locker room." Just fucking smash yourself over, right? But shit like that. He was great, and stories and shit. That's the one thing that I'm so happy that I got to ask him was, and we've told the story, they can find it on YouTube, but his story about the fucking riot in Cleveland with Powers and Ox Baker. And what a great storyteller. Well, you could see it in his face also. And the Ernie, if he had been born 30 years later or lived 30 years longer, he could have been James Earl Jones in Hollywood with that voice and the way that he had the inflection to tell a story. Ox, the natives are getting restless. I mean, just...
if he had been born 30 years later, beyond the injuries that come naturally for guys that size, with the advancements in knee surgeries, he would have had a different career in wrestling and football, probably.
Yeah, and the fact that he did all that stuff from the late 50s, his pro football career, late 50s through mid to late 60s, or college and pro. When he that's why he quit. He was making more money wrestling. The pro football protocols and doctors, medical programs, it was what I'm trying to say, weren't anything to write home about either at that point in time, when those guys didn't make as much money as goddamn wrestlers did.
Even though, like baseball, Mickey Mantle had a Hall of Fame career. He's one of those names that people think about when they think about the greatest players of all time. He tore his knee up in 1951 in the World Series when he was a rookie. And we believe he tore his ACL, and he was never that speed ever again. He was the fastest guy in baseball up to that point as a young rookie. And everyone thought he was going to just be the fastest guy forever. He was never the same. Had a Hall of Fame career, but they didn't do ACL surgeries. So he had to somehow... a lot about dealing with no ACL or a torn ACL.
Yeah.
I believe, Yankee Stadium's outfield at that time, they still had drains in the outfield. And he tripped over a drain and it tore his knee up.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, is that the baseball equivalent of the trap door in the ring?
I guess so.
Fucked up Davey Boy's back?
Yeah. There's always been conspiracies, too, that DiMaggio kind of could have gotten it, but didn't.
That fucking vindictive DiMaggio.
And there's a photo of DiMaggio after, Mantle's hurt, standing over him, just looking what's going on. Not that there's anything nefarious with that, but...
Oh, standing over him. Yeah, because he'd slipped him the fucking steel-toed boot right in the point of the back there.
But, Ernie Ladd's knees, you think of like Mickey Mantle, Sandy Koufax's arm. He retired at 30 years old because he didn't want to take painkillers to pitch because they didn't have the surgeries for elbow injuries like they do now. Are there other cases in wrestling like that where an injury ended someone's career, but with the modern advancements and surgeries and science and everything else that it wouldn't have?
Oh, I'm sure, without having everybody's medical report from the 40s and 50s and on in front of us, I'm sure that has happened. But that's the thing is that Ernie, it's a pity that most of the footage that's out there is from like 84 when we got to work with him in Mid-South. That was really his last. He worked a few matches in, I think, 85, maybe. But that was kind of his last year. He was working there in the Carolinas and doing some favors for Watts or Crockett or whatever. Everybody respected him.
He shaved his mustache off. That was the biggest mistake for 84.
Well, but he was looking at his exit plan. But I'm going to say, was he okay? I'm thinking he was 47-ish at that point. And this is a guy who had played pro football at a high level, was a professional athlete. You can say what you want about wrestlers, but, his knees were in horrible shape and he couldn't even really straighten his legs out mostly.
He was born in 1938.
Okay, so he was 46, 47-ish in 84, 85. And I would think that it would have prolonged his career had he had better treatment, as you said, on his knees at that point. But that's the pity that a lot of the footage is the early 80s, and that's when, his knees were already, he was still doing the fucking big jump up and leg drop, but not with the same force and velocity, and he couldn't land on his ass anymore. And he in the 70s, you see pictures, he was drop kicking. And my God, he looked in the 60s, his early publicity photos, he looked like a 7-foot version of Muhammad Ali. He wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was a big cat and moved like it. But anyway, you know what big cats feed on, Brian?
Big cat food.
And I'll tell you what kind of big cat food that Dad wants, because he's the big cat in his house for Father's Day, is from our friends at Omaha Steaks. Do you see what I did there?
I'm already hungry.
Economy of verbiage to get it right to the point. Father's Day experts at Omaha Steaks, folks, have put together some various packages of meat, cattle byproduct, air-chilled chicken, beefy burgers, juicy pork chops, the bacon-wrapped filet mignons, the bulbous burgers. These burgers they got now are even bigger than the big burgers they had before.
Bulbous.
So the bulbous, buy them. But they've got, the possibilities are endless. Endless flavor, endless variety, endless value, but not priceless. They got a price and it's cheap. And right now it's still time for Father's Day. Because they overnight this stuff. They actually have a group that sends these packages out. They're not only vacuum packed, they're not only flash frozen, and so they don't spoil, they don't rot in a truck somewhere, but they've got the styrofoam cooler that you can keep and use for your very own is what they come in. And they send with each gift package that's wrapped like this and frozen like this, their own personal Eskimo to escort it right to your door.
There is no Eskimo. There would be no need for an Eskimo, and there is no Eskimo, and I don't even know if we're allowed to say Eskimo.
No, I'm just kidding, because he just looks like an Eskimo, because the box with the Omaha Steaks is so cold that my delivery person had to have a parka on. He had the fur gloves, he had the parka, he had the Russian Cossack hat, and he was shivering. And there was icicles hanging off his nose. That's how frozen this thing was.
Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen,
how do they bring them to you?
No, your food will be frozen, but the package will be delivered in a very safe and easy way for you to transport into your house. You don't have to worry about being frozen or frostbitten or anything else.
No, I'm not saying that, Brian. The time that you bring it into your house, it's not going to have a chance to harm you. It's only continued exposure that could be fatal. That's why that the delivery drivers have to really wrap up, because they got that taking their truck for a couple hours. It's dropped the temperature 50, 60 degrees in their truck.
Ladies and gentlemen, none of this should be a concern of yours. None of it at all should be a concern of yours.
They're taking all the risk for you, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to. You just open this thing up and then dispose of the packaging in your normal way, in your hazmat material receptacle, where the hazmat crew can come by and pick it up and enjoy the flavor of the steaks with gift packages starting at just $99. And when you use the promo code JCE at your checkout, you're going to get $10 off of that, or $10 off of anything. You're going to get $10 off just by putting promo code JCE into the little box at their little checkout. You will get big boxes of big flavor with Omaha steaks that you can bribe dad with to let you use the car or whatever the kids want to do these days. Go out and get some type of fucking transplant or goddamn something pierced.
Transplant?
Whatever the kids do these days, they get things hanging out of their fucking nose, and their ears are goddamn have big holes in them. Or they have some part of their body transplanted onto another part. I don't know what the...
You know, we talked about the bull fighting and bull riding last week.
No, they don't sell bull at Omaha Steaks.
But the people who have the piercing where it's like a bull has, like through the middle of their nose and on each side of the nostril, what the hell is that? Does it signify something?
How do you blow your nose and get the snot out of the little, because your finger is bigger than the little ring. So it seems like that it would be hard to take the Kleenex and stick your finger all the way through the nose ring to get the snot out after you blow your nose. But not if you're a bull, because they got big noses with big rings.
Yeah, I don't know who started that trend, but that's all I think of. Does this person want to look like a bull? Like, what is this look? But Omaha Steaks, you don't have to worry about any of that. No bull.
No bull with Omaha Steaks, folks. Only the straight facts. And you need to hoof it right now over to your computer, and you need to type in omahasteaks.com. Is that what it is? God damn it. Where is it? Where is the goddamn website?
Where is it, ladies and gentlemen? That is the question we've all been asking today.
They've got all of this copy without actually saying omahasteaks.com.
Oh, come on. It says it there. Let me go to the...
I'm just telling you. Telling you, read that whole goddamn copy up there at the top, and you will not find it. It's only down in the small print. That they say, I wanted to make sure.
It's in red. It's in red. What do you mean?
Where is it in red?
On Omaha Steaks. It's in red.
Where?
In the red part.
It's the red part. God damn it. Yours is different colored than mine then. Because it doesn't, I can't find it.
Ladies and gentlemen, visit omahasteaks.com. omahasteaks.com. Promo code JCE right now. For mouth-watering steaks, omahasteaks.com is what it is. Promo code JCE.
Yeah, the first place that they have it is down here where it says 30-second script, and it takes me 30 seconds to fart. So I don't even ever look at that. omahasteaks.com, promo code JCE, $10 off your order today.
Today. Right now.
And any time before Father's Day, because you need to hurry. God damn it, this is urgent.
Do it now. Go now.
Go.
With omahasteaks.com. Promo code JCE.
Well, Brian, I told you not to aggravate me. You always have to have the last word here, but I'm going to take it easy on you today because you tickled me earlier today before we went on the air.
Come here. Let me tickle you.
No, you tickled me. In a humorous fashion.
Why doesn't any wrestler tickle his opponent? It would throw him completely off guard.
That used to be a fucking thing that sometimes a babyface would do to the heel but nevertheless, you humored me. Well, you didn't humor me. You made me laugh. Goddamn, now you...
Did I tickle your funny bone?
You tickled my funny bone is what you did, and it was standing up all the way. No, you retweeted a tweet from some other Twitterer. I don't know who the guy was. Oh, God damn it. Earlier today, at Command Central, you retweeted a tweet of a guy that tweeted the YouTube clip of me and the promo I did on Sunshine that we've talked about here on the program. We've talked about my days in Dallas, world-class wrestling. My days, actually my 6 month sentence. And we've referred to it, and I watched it again for the first time in years and years, just because it's 3 minutes long, and it didn't take a lot of time, but we got the point across. And I realized I've not really told the whole story. I've talked about the lines I'd hit her with and the promos we did back and forth, but the story of this specific promo and or why we had to do what we did to have a match that we kind of didn't really have, but it was one of the feature events on a sellout Star Wars show at the Tarrant County Convention Center. Should I go on?
You should, but one thing, and I don't know if we've ever done this before, and my apologies to anyone who already knows all this, but there are a lot of younger listeners, a lot of new listeners, and a lot of people who, even if they're into world class, they may not get past the Von Erichs, the Freebirds, Gino and Chris.
We forgot that not everybody's like you and me and knows everything that's ever happened in wrestling.
Sunshine, for a brief moment there, was a major star in world class. She did what I think is the greatest promo any woman has ever done in professional wrestling after she broke up with Jimmy Garvin, or however you want to put it. But it's not just you doing a promo against a girl. There were no girls. She was the girl.
She was the girl. And see, that's the thing is, again, it's hard for the people to understand, but Sunshine had started briefly as the valet of Jimmy Garvin, and then Precious came into the picture, and as you mentioned, the breakup, and then Sunshine began seconding the main event baby faces against Jimmy Garvin, and then branched out when that run was over with. On the babyface side, obviously the Von Erichs were kings. And at the time we were there, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, the Fantastics, were the other baby faces that were really over and really popular, and Sunshine. And when they would bring, like they put her with Kabuki, who had been a main event baby face there at one point. More on this in a minute. And when they brought Hercules Hernandez, trying to make him a baby face, they put him with her because they loved her. And meanwhile, again, we're talking about it on the Mid-South reviews that we've been doing in my date book and going back 40 years. I was different than in Mid-South. I was different than Skandor Akbar, the manager they'd been used to. Ex-wrestler, tough guy, Arab oil magnate, or wherever Ak said he got his money from. And in Dallas, they were used to Gary Hart, and it was brilliant, but Gary had been there 15 years on and off, right? And also, yes, he was evil and obviously a repugnant asshole who tried to, but I was this fucking smart-ass punk kid, blah, blah, blah. It was different, and they knew they could whip me, but we didn't have as much physical heat in Dallas, but so it was a different kind of thing. And when she had Scott Casey for a while, I didn't mean that in a vulgar way, but and Scott Casey had something going on with the Midnight. So the point is, our guys kept colliding. And then toward the end of April, remember I mentioned they asked me to start coming to the booking meetings. Which,
yeah,
at first I was like, well, you want me to what? I was like, oh shit. And then I realized there was 12 people in a fucking booking meeting. Fritz was there. And obviously Ken Mantell was the booker. He was there. But you had Gary Hart, Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez, David Manning, Bronco Lubitsch. I don't know if Rick Hazard was in the room or not.
Any of the Von Erich kids?
I was going to say Kevin at least once, no, at least twice or three times. Kevin was there. Mike was never there. I don't think Kerry was there. And then who am I leaving out? Possibly somebody. But point is, it was a crowded room. But and then that ended. This promo that we're talking about, that we're going to listen to here in a second, I've cut you off before you actually got that out, is probably the first part of June, because we were building to the 4th of July Star Wars event at Tarrant County Convention Center, Fort Worth. And this was probably like the week before we gave our notice, because my my contributions to the booking committee, or my involvement in it, it started like late April when they asked me, because, you know, and honestly, it was legitimately a show of respect that here I come in and I've been in business 2 years or whatever. And they think, well, this kid might give us some ideas, because I've been doing the Midnight's finishes with the Fantastics and etc.
And your promos, there's no way that they could have heard any of your promos. And I mean, you hear that, you think this guy really knows what he's doing.
Well, and plus, as we mentioned, I'd got a chance to flesh him out a little bit because the field of competition was small, because the crew was small. So I got a lot more time. But anyway, it lasted about 6 weeks, and we gave our notice, and then they didn't ask me to come any more of the meetings. But I mentioned at one time for the Texas Stadium thing, in addition to having, the deal with Little John Harris forced on us, I'd pitched a finish for the Flair and Kevin match in the 2 rings, and they went with the old double count out. Yeah, great move.
You managed Rip Oliver that night too, or that day?
Yeah,
not
against
that night, that day.
Yes, that day, that hot afternoon. But anyway, another one of these meetings, because it had become obvious that Sunshine and I had some interest in what were we going to do to each other, with each other, whatever the case, on opposite sides. And I pitched, why don't I do something with Sunshine? And I said, well, you can't have a match. Well, no, I'm thinking, my God, me and Jimmy Hart, and we had a match with and they had a match with Andy Kaufman in the Coliseum. We had the San Diego Chicken did fucking shit. We can do something. Right. And I said, well, also in Texas, it's not legal to have a man versus woman in a wrestling match or box or any kind of, they didn't have mixed martial arts. Just, you can't have men versus women. And the Texas, what was it? The Department of Labor and Standards or Licensing or whatever the fuck, the Athletic Commission in another name. And so and then also they said, and plus they probably didn't want to put me and Sunshine out there physically for any length of time in front of 12,000 people. But the deal, I don't know if you knew where this stipulation came from. I had seen Joe LeDuc in Louisville one night do a deal with referee Thomas Marlin. And they were going to have a match, but LeDuc had blurted out, and I could beat him blindfolded, or whatever. Okay, well, let's try it then. And they forced him into it, that type of thing. So I say, we did an adaptation of that where it was the Battle of the Sexes. I can't remember the exact verbiage I used to start it. It's not in this interview. We'd already booked it by this point. But I said I could beat Sunshine with one hand tied behind her, but I could beat Sunshine blindfolded. She couldn't even take me off my feet, whatever the fuck. And so the stipulation came in this Battle of the Sexes, this male misogynist pig that thinks that Sunshine ought to be scrubbing the pots and pans. Thank you, Andy Kaufman. And Sunshine, the beloved, the only female figure in world-class wrestling that everybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex loves and cherishes. And the deal is, I'm going to be blindfolded, and I'm going to give Sunshine her best shot. And I don't think she can take me off my feet. And if you don't, Sunshine, that I get to take that blindfold off, and then whatever happens, I can do anything to you I want to do to prove the superiority of the male species. And the whole thing is to get me blindfolded, and they called it an exhibition. It wasn't a match. They were scared the state was going to shut them down or whatever. And then we did the thing that I saw in Louisville with Thomas Merlin and fucking Joe LeDuc, except we changed the perpetrator. As soon as I'm blindfolded and I'm in the ring, and I got my hands behind my back and I'm sticking my chin out of it, I'm waving her on like, come on, come on. Bronco Lubitsch is the referee. I think it was Scott Casey or one of the baby faces runs out and jumps up on the apron and draws Bronco's attention, which he's more than happy because he's probably in on it because this is all a conspiracy against me. And Kabuki comes out the other way and takes Sunshine's place in front of me and hits me with his thrust kick that is his finish and knocks me ass over fucking tea kettle. Boom. And then bails out, and the referee turns around, and Sunshine's standing over me like Ronnie Garvin, right? And she's won, and the place went insane. And then I take the mask off. I'm all groggy. I'm laying there, and I look up at her, and it's Sunshine did this to me? What the fuck? And I had the shock face. And, of course, this was my last night in the territory. We'd already started working for Crockett. So I was more than happy to do the fucking job. Especially for, I think, the best payoff I had the whole 6 months we were in the territory. But it was just a build every week on television, verbally, between these two personalities, until finally the people were happy as clams that they saw this. We did our entrances. I cut the promo. As I mentioned before, I was interrupted in an unscheduled promo from, who was it, Chris Adams talking about Bruiser Brody on the next show or whatever. And then we did our thing, and that was it, and the people loved it. But I had wanted to do something else physically to juice the thing up, which I pitched in one of the meetings. And that's why we're going to get to why this interview happened here. And then we can't just talk bad about each other. I want to do something to get some fucking heat, right? If we can't just come out and punch Sunshine or hit her with the racket, right? They're not going to go for that. But I suggest, what about if you remember the Will Rogers Coliseum in Fort Worth, Brian? It was a rodeo building, and it seated like 6,000, but the floor area was massive for the horse shows. And so it was like a bigger building than it should have been.
I'm familiar with the rodeo.
Well, yeah, you know the rodeo. This ain't your first rodeo. Well, on Friday nights every week, the Sportatorium would fill up or close to, and that was the world-class syndicated show or just regular house shows. Sportatorium atmosphere was insane, great. And the periodic Star Wars shows at Reunion Arena or Tarrant County Convention Center or the Cotton Bowl, whatever. They were great. Will Rogers Coliseum every Monday night was a piss hole in a snowbank. The house would be there'd be like 1,200 people there, maybe. Sometimes it was worse than that. In that 6,000 seat building with a giant floor. And they shot the 2-hour Saturday night program that aired on, KTVT, Channel 11, 10 p.m. to midnight in Dallas on Saturday nights, opposite the first half hour of Saturday Night Live, and this show would beat it. And it was the most boring wrestling show in television history, because this was still the old time show they used to do. And people watched it. It was the incredible numbers, but it was like Brian Adias versus Scott Casey, 2 out of 3 falls, go 30. And then the interviews, right? And occasionally they'd have a good main event. So, but blah. So that's where I used to do my promos, trying to stir people up. And so that's where we were doing most of the work with me and Sunshine. And I said, why don't you have some Girl Scout or small female child come out and present a bouquet of flowers, maybe for the award for being an inspirational figure, whatever the case, to Sunshine. And let me come out and snatch them fucking flowers, and I'm going to smash them against the interview set they have there or whatever. And Sunshine grabs the flowers, and we're doing a tug of war, and Mark Lawrence gets in the middle. And Sunshine yanks the flowers away, but she falls back and she hits her head and knocks herself out. And then I can blame Mark Lawrence for knocking Sunshine out with his microphone and being clumsy. But then I can do the promos where Sunshine at Star Wars. You think you saw stars the last time I saw you? Well, you're going to see some more, right? Oh, God, you can't hurt Sunshine. And at one of those meetings, I think it was Gino Hernandez. I said, well, what can I do to her? You know, and Gino said, throw a drink in her face. Because he was in a nightclub every night. I guess that was like in the old days, the old French people that slapped each other with the fucking glove. They throw the drink in each other's face. I said, how am I going to throw? I'm thinking, what the? And it was decided, yeah, well, you come out, interrupt her, and throw a drink in her face. I said, let me work on this. Why the fuck do I have a drink, right? I'm coming out with a suit and a tennis racket like I normally do, potentially. Why would I have a goddamn drink that I've never had before? Where am I going to get it? Am I going to stop? Wait a minute. Let me lean down at the ringside desk and get this Coke here. And I thought, what is the context? Why would I just come up with that? So what we worked out was basically Sunshine would do a promo where she started talking about how hot she had gotten, about the things I'd said about her, and how hot that I was making all the people in Texas. And she was going to figure out some way to settle that at Star Wars, blah, blah, blah. Right? Just say that, Sunshine. Just say, I've made you hot. You can't say pissed off on TV anyway. I made you hot. And then, since we're having this battle of the sexes, instead of my suit, I come out wearing a fucking warm-up suit that was, in the 80s, was all the rage amongst fucking nerds. And like I've been working out, and I got the tennis shoes on, and I've got my tennis racket, but I've also got this big yellow Will Rogers Coliseum drink cup that they sell the drinks in. Like I've been working out, and I got a towel around my neck, so it doesn't seem ridiculous that I'm carrying a drink in. They can't see it coming. There's no dramatic foreshadowing here. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I understand.
So
no glasses on either.
Well, because I've been working out. What kind of nerd works out with glasses on, right?
Jim
and
Cornette.
Also, it's another one of those places where there wasn't a lot of people walking me through the crowd, and I didn't, thought I'd rather take the barefaced shot just if one came. But nevertheless, this is a point I wanted to make, and then we'll start listening to this thing finally. But this is an example of not only if you don't listen to what the other person is saying to you in the ring when you're actually doing the thing in front of people and on tape instead of what you've just agreed to, beforehand in a locker room, then you often find yourself in deep shit because somebody's got a zinger on you and you just have a comeback. Because I said, because I'm not trying to say I laid this out, but they're asking me to go to the booking meeting. I came up with the goddamn deal. So I'm telling Sunshine what it is, right? And she's fine and happy with doing this. Because she's...
You mean it wasn't Ken Mantell saying, hey, make sure you go out and get some workout gear. Make sure you make this all make sense.
Oh, come on.
We always hear he's the mastermind of world class. He was the booker.
Quit. Just quit. So I told her, I said, you say I've been making you hot and you have made the people in Dallas hot and blah, blah, blah. And then start talking about, the other shows coming up, and I'll come down and it's not my time, and I'll interrupt. And I'll give you the patter about, why I've been working out, and I'll just, jazz it up a little bit. And then I believe she was going to say something about, see, this is how come I get so hot or something like that, to reiterate that. But instead, when I did my whole patter, which was kind of like a combination of every boxing interview you hear, ahead of time. Yeah, I'm moving good. I'm breathing good with little Muhammad Ali. And, I've been doing pull-ups. I've been doing sit-ups. I've been doing push-ups. I've been doing chin-ups. I threw up once, but I'm okay now. That's where I came up with that when I used it later in fucking Crockett. And Richard Simmons, personal friend of the Cornette family, has been training me, all that stuff. I do my patter. She says this is why and does something else. And then I get into the deal where I'm going to apologize because, I've wronged everybody and I've made you so hot and I'm here to apologize and to cool you off. And I threw the drink in her face, as is the basic premise. We didn't have a script. We didn't write anything down. We just talked about it. So when we go out there, my closing line for to be the male chauvinist pig is that I'm going to prove to you, sunshine, it takes a good man to beat you, but it don't take him long. And she picked up on it and she said, well, hey, Cornette, if it takes a man to beat me, you better bring one with you. Ooh, so I turn and we milk the fucking people a minute, and she didn't know this one was coming, but I had well, I couldn't let her. It's Dangerfield, right? Except I changed it from the New York Times. That's where I said, hey, listen, darling, you've been on more street corners than the Dallas Times Herald. Look at that fucking costume you got on. Oh, and that fired her up a little bit.
You hear the audience gasp a little bit.
Yeah, and then we do the deal we're supposed to do it. I throw the drink and I run out, and she screams, and the visual is great, and she's speechless, and we're in and out in 3 minutes. That's pretty much the story behind that. And then I've already told you what we did in the actual match, and that was there. I think there was a double main event that night. We were the feature attraction, and we may have been the second most anticipated thing on the fucking show with the Star Wars event.
Let's go to the audio. We have it here. It's on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. Jim Cornette's infamous promo on Sunshine. A couple things about it before I play it. Because of the look of the TV, and specifically this clip, the red ropes, Full House, it's almost the best equivalent to the look of Raw now for any wrestling show back then.
Well, but now hold on, Full House. That's just what they shot. There's plenty of room in the Will Rogers Coliseum.
Well, it looks full just based on what they're showing you. Wherever they have people,
the thing is so goddamn big, the far ends of it, you could have another show going on.
My other favorite thing is David Manning. Because he comes out with you, and then he quickly goes from standing next to you to standing between you and Sunshine with just his arm out there. But at one point, and it may be the line, it may have even been before that, you say something, and he goes, all right, that's enough.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. And then Mark Lawrence, like, okay, McCornette, that's enough. There.
plus, got to recognize Mark Lawrence was a wonderful guy. He was a pastor or preacher of some kind locally. If folks know that's not my expertise, so I don't want to mislabel him, but some kind of a man of cloth. And he also was like the more clean-shaven, younger, more religious version of Reese or Bowden, in that you felt like if you set him on fucking fire, you couldn't get him to yell. And so when you hear the people were used to him. And so when you hear him go, well, I've never seen anything like that. Mark, wonderful, wonderful human being, Mark Lawrence.
But the charisma of a very pleasant funeral director.
Yeah, there you go. As a matter of fact, at first I had taken him but then I met Paul Bearer and I said, fuck, Percy's got so much personality. Maybe I've underestimated the funeral directors. But anyway.
But let's go to this audio. Jim Cornette's infamous promo on Sunshine from World Class 1985. Let's go to this.
Here now, the lovely Sunshine, who I know is very interested in Thursday night, not only with your thing with Cornette, but also you are very confident as to who will win that bout between Adams and Kabuki and who really does have the best kick.
Oh, I certainly am. I am ready for Thursday. 4th of July is going to be my day. I've been waiting for this a long time. I think, I've been getting pretty hot at Cornette, and I think I'm not the only one who's been getting hot. And I think maybe it's about time somebody took some of those words of his and shoved it right down his throat. Because he's got a big enough fist, a big enough mouth to fit both of these fists, and we might try it out. What do you think?
Okay, hold on.
She's good.
She's good. Exactly. I felt bad for her because she said he's got a big enough fist, or he's got a big enough mouth to fit both these fists. But she seemed vulnerable also. She wasn't coming out there like, like one of the modern day superstars where she's 5'0" and 90 pounds and is coming out like Bruiser Brody. She didn't claim to be a wrestler, and she wasn't, she was just this feisty woman that was going to stand up for what she believed in and stand up for her rights and blah, blah, blah. And she seemed vulnerable when she was out there because she wasn't a braggadocious public speaker, but it kind of worked for her. But that, as we said, that was kind of the setup there. And then they're going to try to keep going in the direction that they had planned when some asshole breaks in an unscheduled fashion.
You're right. And also on the 4th of July, Chris Adams is going to face the great Kabuki. And I think I know who's got the best kick, but I think everyone else is going to be, it's going to be a terrific bout. It's not...
And now she's distracted. Wait a minute. Well, no, I mean, keep going, but
I heard you say, wait a minute.
Well, no, she's distracted. Wait a minute. There's somebody coming that way is what I was trying to convey.
Coming out with your yellow cup, and, of course, David Manning right behind you.
Yes.
Cornette is arriving, and Sunshine, let's try to ignore this if possible.
And you know what? I just want to stop it here as you're going by. There's still, like this is what I missed. There's still old men at ringside.
Oh, yeah.
And those guys, those guys have been going to the matches like every week for 20 years, 30 years.
Oh, no, they fucking were big fans of Wild Bill Longson in the 40s.
How stylish. And what's the matter, Cornette? You can't wait till the 4th or what?
Look, I'm going to try to remain cool. I don't want no trouble. I just want to tell you that I'm looking forward to the 4th, too, because I'm ready for you. I've been doing push-ups, I've been doing sit-ups, I've been doing chin-ups, I've been doing pull-ups. I threw up once, but I'm okay now. I've been in serious training. I got my training clothes on now. You know about Richard Simmons, personal friend of the Cornette family. Besides that, I'm in the best shape of my career. I'm moving good, I'm breathing good, and I'm all ready for the 4th. I hear you're in fighting fit. Well, after the 4th of July, you're going to be fighting for air and fit for nothing, because I'm going to show you that it takes a good man to beat you, but it don't take him long.
If it's going to take a man to beat me, then why don't you bring one with you?
Okay, hold on.
David Manning is perfect because he has his hand up, but he always has to be a baby face, so he kind of smiles as he looks at you after she says that.
Well, and here's the thing. When that came up, you heard the people, right? Boom! So I immediately paused because if I'd have rattled right back at her, they wouldn't have heard it anyway, and it would have fell flat. And also, I bow up backwards a little bit, and I knew the handheld was on the right of me. So I turn, not only so the people in the building can see that I've been taken aback, but also so that handheld that's on can see my face. And then as the fucking audio from the crowd is coming down, that's when I come back in and don't rush the punchline until they're going to fucking hear it so I can get my ooh, which you can continue with now.
Did you ever deal with handhelds in the ring before World Class?
Oh, no, not in the ring. In Memphis.
For promos and stuff. I mean, you know.
Well, no, not for anything. The thing about it, in Memphis, they had, it was all in, the TV was in the studio. So they all the cameras they used there were, at the time, were studio cameras on rollers instead of handheld. And then at the Coliseum, it was Ken Parnell at ringside with the handheld that they had bought, but he didn't get in the ring because he, also had all those fucking wires of the day hanging off of him. And Mid-South, they didn't do a lot of handheld shit, nothing in the ring. So, yes, this was, when we got to the world-class production, especially at the Sportatorium, and they were right over our shoulder, that's where I started doing the pre-match instructions from the manager for fucking real, because they could actually hear it. And also, they would shoot us more because they knew what I was doing. But we digress, or I do.
Oh, look at, oh, big mouth, huh? Big mouth. Let me tell you something. You've been on more street corners than the Dallas Times Herald. Look at that outfit you got on.
Let's not have any more of this if possible.
Wait a minute, I just...
Let's not have any more of this.
Yeah. And he's like, he's a preacher. He's scared of, because he had also been the one doing the interview when I said Sunshine's real name was Virginia. They called her Virgin for short, but not for long. And the night that I said, I don't know how to describe Sunshine, but I wish I could say the word slut on television. So they'd have to bleep me so the people would wonder what the fuck that I said.
I want to say one thing. I'm going to be nice, and then I'm going to go. I heard you say that I'd made you angry, made all these people angry, that you were hot at me and everything. I didn't mean to get you so upset, and I just figured that I want to apologize. I'm sure all the people will accept my apology. I didn't mean to get you so hot, and I would like to take it upon myself right now to cool you off.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I've seen it all.
And leave it playing, leave it playing, because I just want to say you're hearing Sunshine screaming, but she's saying nothing intelligible, and that's the point.
Sunshine, obviously, in the same mood that you and I will be had that happened to us. I've seen it all.
Bless Mark Lawrence, but the people were pissed. They were highly upset about that type of thing.
Is that your favorite thing that you did in World Class?
Yeah. Because also we did the other stuff. I mean, Sunshine got a few in on me as well before the finish, that we did a deal in, I think it was in Will Rogers in Fort Worth also, where early on in the thing where I squared off with her and she took her shoes off like she was going to fight me or whatever. And I just fucking pointed at her and looked at the people like, what the fuck? And the previous Friday, we'd gone down to the Sportatorium and I'd taught her how to arm drag me. And goddamn, that ring smelled like mildew. But anyway, so I point at her and I turn around like, look at this girl, thinks she's got it. She grabs my arm and gives me the big arm drag and the people go crazy. And, oh shit. And I'm shocked and all that stuff, or whatever the case. So that was fun. Yes. And the promos too.
Did you realize that spoiled you when you started working with Baby Doll?
Well, I'm sure if we'd have had a chance to get more physical, at Sunshine at some point or another would have potatoed me, but she didn't nearly have the force or velocity or mass or any of the other astronomical terms that I could use that Baby Doll hit me with. So
that's the thing. When I first heard you tell that story, it was the funniest thing. And I'm like, man, what a story. And then I saw the video. I'm like, man, she punched him as hard as she fucking
good
could,
Lord.
Right
Well,
in
no,
the back of the head.
That wasn't even the worst. I got over that in 3 or 4 days, but the fucking dislocating my jaw in St. Louis, it still clicks every once in a while when I try to yawn and pop my right ear on the slap that was supposed to miss me. That's why I didn't move. She came toward me. But yeah, so Sunshine was easier. And well, like I said, we didn't do that much physical stuff, so we didn't have the opportunity to potato each other.
She's one of the very, very few people you could say you never hear anything about for probably over 20 years. No appearances, nothing. Have you ever heard anything about what happened to Sunshine?
Well, I don't know that anything happened to her. I don't want to spread
not that
rumor.
Happened, but just where is Sunshine?
Understand she was kidnapped by the Sandinistas, but otherwise than that, I have no knowledge.
Valerie French, right?
Well, yes. And now that you mention it, and now that you've brought it up, because I haven't actually thought about Where's Sunshine lately, but that is I hope she's doing well somewhere, but it's amazing that she hasn't made any of these reunions or anything like that. Because she went to Mid-South with Ken Mantell for Watts in
86, 87,
86, when he became Booker and took a lot of took a lot of the Dallas talent rather to Watts. And is that the last thing she did?
I think so. She was with the Freebirds, actually. And then I don't think she ever did anything ever again. If she did, it probably would have only been in Dallas, but I don't remember her after that point. And again,
a glowing endorsement of traveling with the Freebirds.
Well, that's the thought I have. Unfair or fair, I don't know. Just she was a young girl around world class when there was more partying than ever before. If that affects you, that could affect you in a way you're like, I don't want anything to do with this business again if you're around the wrong crowd.
Well, yes, but now in all fairness to all parties, she was young in terms of younger than you and I are right now, but she was old enough to know better and probably enjoyed a few things before, and did at one point when I was there in Dallas have issues with keeping her schedule and etc. But we don't know that anything real bad happened like that. But we would like to wish her well wherever she is in the Federal Witness Protection Program.
Think about it. I mean, there have been documentaries by WWE and by that Heroes of World Class documentary that other people did.
Nobody.
There have been movies about the Von Erichs, Dark Side of the Ring. No one ever addresses where Sunshine went. She's never interviewed. No one references her. It's weird.
And again, she was, with the exception of the Von Erichs, and I mean, she may have been at one point there when the valet angle was going on, she may have been more popular than the Fantastics or any of the other, baby faces not named Von Erich.
She was the valet that put valets really on the map for the 80s.
And so, and she was a lot of the Chris Adams appeal when they were facing Garvin.
Hey, can I play one more
Nobody
thing?
Talks anything about, yeah, you go ahead.
Here's the famous...
I'm just pissed off about Sunshine being glossed over.
Here's the famous promo I said before that may be the greatest promo any woman has ever done in professional wrestling. Sunshine, November 12th, 1983, after Jimmy Garvin leaves the stable of Sunshine or the side of Sunshine to be with her assistant, Precious, who no one knew was really married to Jimmy Garvin, so it was perfect. It made perfect sense. Let's go to this press conference.
He's on all right. Test. Can you hear it out there okay? Fine. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the press, for being in attendance today. Sunshine has asked me to be her personal representative, and I'd like to announce to you the fact that she has a statement for you. It'll be a prepared statement. She will read it, after which there will be no questioning at all. Once again, thanks for showing up, and without further ado, here's Sunshine.
Everybody knows by now what's happened here. Everybody knows how Jimmy, in that sorry excuse for a woman, dumped me. Well, Jimmy, you're not going to get away with it. You hear me? Because after everything I did for you, you think you can get away with that. Well, then you underestimate me. You come up to me with a gift, right? An assistant for me, supposed to be helping me. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You kind of, the only thing she's been good for is to get in between us. I'll tell you one thing. Of course, I left you. And I took everything. Well, I'll tell you one other thing. If you look around a little bit, you're going to find out that I took the tapes. All those tapes I took for you through the years, because you asked me to do it. I took the medical history and everything. And if you want it back, don't come looking for me. Go to Chris Adams' house. Because that's why I sent him. Because I hope he can use them to beat you in that American title match that's coming up. And one other thing, I'm going to be there. And I'm not going to be by your side like I always was either. I'm going to be looking you straight in the eye. And I'm going to watch you go down on that mat and lose that night.
Let me stop it for a second because she pauses before she keeps going. It's incredible how good she is at making it feel real.
again, it's like everybody that saw that, because this is a vindictive woman that's been scorned or dumped or whatever. And of course, the tapes and the medical records were the story that because she had been with Garvin, she knew not only the tapes, the reports on his opponent, but also his weaknesses and his medical records. And she's going to Chris Adams's house. And because Adams is the guy that is Garvin's arch enemy.
Well, also, they set that up when they first came in, because Jimmy Garvin at first wouldn't wrestle on TV. He had tapes of everyone else, but no one was going to have tape of him. The whole thing with the tapes was from the very moment they got there.
Yeah.
A year earlier.
And the thing is that it's perfect because it sounds like such and here's the thing of Precious, Patty was married to Jimmy. She was his wife, but Sunshine was Jimmy's cousin from Florida that when he got the idea for the gimmick, I don't think he wanted it because they had kids. I don't think he wanted Patty to be on the road all the time. So he asked her Sunshine, if she wanted to do it. And then, but as it got over so well and became an established thing, and then I think Jimmy thought, well, this could be a way Patty could be making a lot of fucking money here. Because they were together, they were making double pay in wrestling for 4 good years there as a married couple. So they brought Patty in, and that established the valet versus valet thing that then came Missy Hyatt, and then came Dark Journey, and then came every other feuding bunch of girls that followed.
Even Elizabeth. I mean, that was still part of the wave of valets that started with Sunshine, but let's go back to this promo.
As far as that tramp of yours is concerned, if she gets near me, there's gonna be a war. As a matter of fact, you turned against me. I've done everything for you. You turned against me and went on her side. She cost you that match. You know she did. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be the American champion, Jimmy. You probably wouldn't be anything. When that match comes up and you go down and you lose, and he's got you on that mat and holding you down, if I get close enough to you, I'm gonna scratch your eyes out. And if that little tramp of yours comes near me, I'll pull every hair out of her head. And I'll pull her clothes off and expose her for what she is, and you know what she is to everybody.
Let me stop it there for a second. Do you believe her?
Yes. See, that's the thing. This is not bullshit. This is in Dallas, Texas in 1983, half of the fucking men in town had heard these pretty much very words, I'm sure. It doesn't sound like wrestling bullshit. It sounds like it's real.
Jimmy, all this wouldn't be necessary. I don't know why you did this to me. You asked me to do things that I wouldn't dream of doing before. I turned against everything I believed in and everything I was brought up to be. You turned me into something totally different because I loved you, Jimmy. I don't understand why.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, under the circumstances, you can. No, I'm terribly sorry. I'm sure under these circumstances that you can understand that we're going to have to call a halt to this press conference. She's emotionally charged up and disturbed about the situation. Please bear with us, but we will have to call it off at this time. Thank you for being in attendance.
And there at the end was where she switches babyface. That's why she did all those, because she's been interfering for Garvin and, cheating and helping him win against all their favorite wrestlers. But now this is what the deal was. It was all him. He turned her against everything she was brought up to believe, and boom goes the dynamite. She's the most popular fucking person on the television show.
Yeah, see, everyone there saw her cheat for him, and now she gave the justification. I loved you. And that's the thing that breaks her at the end, that she loved him. And man, you know, the other important thing to note is, not really because of this, because of the Von Erichs and Von Erichs Freebirds, there were more women coming to wrestling in Dallas than maybe anywhere else.
Oh, yeah.
And this was the only thing involving women on the show. So in front of that audience, this really blew up.
And I would say that at that time, because the rock and roll hadn't gone to Charlotte yet, and they brought women to Mid-South, but it was nothing like Dallas. That was the most female-dominated crowd.
And this is 83 Dallas. That's the hottest year, isn't it?
Yes. But even in 85, it was still, you know, they were, for a few years, not only were they red hot, and this was one of the top deals, but they were heavily, I mean, was it 60% sometimes? Probably.
You see, that's the thing too, like when people get mad at us sometimes, specifically you, for criticizing any of the women's promos, not matches or anything, but just the promos. When we say a Mercedes Moné doesn't seem natural, for me, I'm judging it on stuff like this that drew me in, that I believed. Even though I know it's a work, I believe there's something going on. She's crying. There's a way to do it and do it well, and this is a great example of it.
And you know what, with Jimmy Garvin, have you seen what he looks like today?
I have.
He's bald.
Well, there's
not one hair on his head.
Well, he certainly celebrated the years that he had with the big curly hair.
But he never did a hair match. Can you imagine?
Looked like he was in Toto.
Yeah, exactly. Or Three Dog Night. And he could have doubled for Chuck Negrin, right? But nevertheless, if he'd have only done a hair match in his prime when he had the hair to put up in the match, and then not only could they have sold tickets to it, Brian, but they could have got a sponsorship. Can you imagine if you'd have told our friends at Harry's that Jimmy Garvin is going to get his head shaved in the middle of the Coliseum in Charlotte, and it's going to be with a Harry's razor? Can you imagine what they would have ponied up?
Imagine that. Imagine when your head was shaved in the middle of the ring. Imagine if they had a sturdy razor, like a Harry's razor.
Imagine if they'd had a quality piece of merchandise that they wouldn't have had to take the goddamn top layer of my skin off with as well. All of these things. See, Harry's could have been a big deal in the wrestling business for a long time when guys still got their head shaved and they were scared of it. Now the people look good with their head shaved now. Where did these mutants with differently shaped heads come along the last generation or show? Generation or so, and show up and fucking scare everybody with their bald heads. But nevertheless, folks, if you'd like to take the hair off your face and slap somebody else in the face with it, our friends at Harry's can help you out with at least the first part of that, because we mentioned before, not only is Harry's a pleasure to deal with as a business. I mean, Harry himself is sending these razors out. He works late at night in his garage, sending these razors out by the literal thousands. But also, Harry has German-engineered blades that he is making in his own factory. Now, apparently his factory is not in Germany. They engineered them, and then he's making them in his own factory, but they stay sharp longer. And there's 5 blades to the cartridge. That means if the first blade stretches the hair out, the second blade stretches it out even further, the third blade starts to cut it, but just kind of gnaws on it. The fourth blade brings it all the way out by the follicle, and the fifth blade slaps that son of a bitch off right at the root. That's the way it works.
That's the way it works.
And you can get now the trial set, if you don't believe me. And who in the world would make something like that up? If you don't believe me, you can get a $13 trial set for just $3 right now at harrys.com/JCE. Now there's There's no apostrophe in Harry's. It's just Harrys. So don't be confused. But again, the trial set where you get the German engineered 5-blade razor with the ergonomically designed handle, the foaming shave gel, and the travel cover so you don't cut yourself inadvertently when you're ruffling through your suitcase, because that sometimes those can be fatal. You hear that sometimes more than 3,000 tourists a year slice an artery on a razor in their bag that's uncovered.
You don't hear that, and again, let's not, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Let's not pretend that has anything to do with what we're talking about today. We're talking about Harry's.
What are we talking about today?
Harry's with no apostrophe.
Well, and they've also got, there's an apostrophe when you're just talking about them, but there's not on the website.
Oh,
but also they have some other great products at harrys.com, such as the skin softening body wash in scents like redwood, wildlands, and stone. Actually, I smell more like cement. They've got the extra strength, high quality, amazing smelling deodorant. It goes for just $5. So you can smell good cheaply. And hair and grooming products and mustache waxes and various beard snoods and apparatuses to hold your shit together. But you get the $13 trial set for just $3 right now at harrys.com/JCE. You're saving $10 from what you would normally pay to what you would pay now with that secret code. Get more performance out of your shave with Harry's.
That's right. You know what Jimmy Garvin said when he shaved off all of his facial hair?
What did he say?
It's not my fault.
I'd workshop that one if I were you.
Shit.
Well, he might have said shit. That might have been funnier if he'd have just said shit when he shaved all of his hair off.
Guilty pleasure of mine is 1986 Jimmy Garvin when he comes into work for Crockett. He was just so different than everyone else and so over the top, coming out the sharp-dressed man and doing his little dance while just was spraying around him. Big mark for 86 Jimmy Garvin.
It was a tremendous wrestling gimmick, and it worked in Dallas, and it worked in Charlotte. And that's why that the 1989 Freebirds were doomed, because even though Michael and Jimmy were legitimately personal friends, you couldn't change people's perception of Jimmy Garvin into some kind of rock and roll badass rebel. He was a foo-foo, he was a foo-foo guy in sequins with a fucking valet, and he's gorgeous, and he's got the gorgeous George perfume sprayer, and you can't suddenly become goddamn Bruiser Brody. Didn't work. But anyway, your shave from Harry's will work.
Hey, weird question for you, because it involves you, and everything involving the initial angle was amazing when you burned Ronnie Garvin, but it turned Jimmy Garvin babyface. Do you think he stayed babyface too long?
Oh,
because I think he was much better as a heel. Again, my enjoyment of Jimmy Garvin changes once he becomes a babyface. And then once the Flair feud happens and JJ wants to hide in the closet and Ronnie Garvin once again dresses a drag.
Well, the Garvin brothers were a good tag team, and for a short time, and the people accepted them, and for a short time, as an odd couple tag team, and Precious was still part of the mix, they worked, and I think that Jimmy should have gotten, the shots at Flair, because that was, he was an over personality, but I may have to agree with you that, after that, that gimmick or character, as the kids would say these days, with the female valet and the whole way that he'd been presented, it didn't lend itself in that talent crowded territory and at that time to be a long-term babyface thing. And, and then obviously after a while, Patty didn't want to be on the road anymore and was staying home with the kids. And that's why Jimmy became a Freebird, but it wasn't a shining day for the Freebirds.
No, that was my first exposure to the Freebirds.
Oh.
And Terry Gordy was there at the very beginning because it was 89 NWA, so they were still kind of a trio. And then Terry Gordy was like, the money over here in Japan is just so good. Why am I still doing this with Michael?
Well, not even really just with WCW and just, the whole thing. He didn't need to come over there and work that hard even for that much money in front of that small of fucking crowds at that time period.
When everyone talks about like the problems, and I know we're going to talk about the Rick Steamboat documentary on probably the drive-through, but the problems with NWA 1989 and Jim Herd and the talent that left or were chased away or had their contract offers taken off the table. You think of Terry Funk, retired, Ricky Steamboat, gone, Wyndham, chased off, Tully and Arn, well, Tully doesn't come in. Not enough people mention that Terry Gordy was gone. Terry Gordy was there, and then he was gone.
Yeah. Oh, but we'll get to that later on in the program when we start solving the continuing mystery of Who Killed WCW.
But just to put a cap on that, Harry's.com.
Yes,
code.
and the hairy people that need them. Before we talk about SmackDown, hopefully fairly briefly, there was a few landmark events that took place, but they got a pay-per-view next week. They're clashing at the castle again. And I don't have clashes at my castle. I've turned away all the invaders and now everything's peaceful. But apparently they're clashing again at the castle. Where are they this time that has castles?
Glasgow, Scotland.
Is it Glasgow or Glasgow? I was over there 10 years ago, but I've slept since then.
Some guy just sent me an email the other day yelling at me about it, and I don't even remember which way he went. I think it's Glasgow, and I was
that's the thing, because they've made me doubt myself. And poor Kenny McIntosh probably cussing me now, because he's the one that taught it to me to begin with. But now so many people have had so many goddamn interjections, I've doubt myself.
I blame Howard Finkel. All those years I heard him introduce Roddy Piper.
Well, let's just say Scotland. They're in Scotland.
At a castle.
At a castle in Scotland.
Cardiff,
like
Wales.
A castle in a story in a medieval play. I foresee terrible trouble, but
so the previous one was in Cardiff, Wales. This one is at the OVO Hydro in Glasgow, Scotland.
Why are all the arenas now over there in the British Isles named the Hydros? They're named after water, and say either the O2 or the Hydro. What is the water fascination?
They finally have running water in the arenas.
When I was over there, they've got one of the hotel rooms had separate hot and cold, not only spigots, or not only handles, operating mechanisms, but spigots. It was all hot out of one, all cold out of the other on the other side. What are the fuck you supposed to run your hands real quick in between? What?
Well, think about it. If you have a castle that you had built 500 years ago, no one was prepared for modern plumbing.
No, this was a goddamn chain hotel in the year 2016. Is what I'm telling you.
Well, sometimes it's the same thing at the Best Western, is what I meant to say.
I know some Best Westerns that were built in the 1800s. They really were Best Westerns.
All right, well, Clash at the Castle.
All right, what's going to happen there? What are these matches that we're going to be subjected to from the number one leading industry promotion in the world today, making all kinds of billions of dollars?
This coming Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The first match listed here, Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill versus Alba Fire and Isla Dawn versus Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark.
Yeah, they set this one up on SmackDown with a nice sloppy brawl between all these teams, and then Jade and Bianca, the baby faces, laid everybody out. So I'm anxious to see them beat everybody up again, I guess. I don't know what to tell you.
For the WWE Women, that was for the Tag Team Championship, by the way.
Bianca, well, of course it was. Yes.
For the Women's Championship, the champion Bayley versus Piper Niven with Chelsea Green.
What is this, Glow? Is every match on a card a girls' match?
No one's rapping.
You had to go there. Okay, Piper and Chelsea and Bayley and yeah. Well, Piper's from over there somewhere. She talks the funny, like she's from over there somewhere. Do I sound like I'm from Pixley? She has an accent that indicates that she's from somewhere in the United Kingdom area.
She's from Scotland.
Well, she's a home. So is Bailey going to get Bailey going to get bailed out of the building? Bailey going to get booed out of the building?
It'll be interesting. Hometown Girl returns to the castle against Bailey. Also on the show, Jim, for the Intercontinental Championship, the champion Sami Zayn versus Chad Gable with Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxine Dupree.
I'm looking forward to seeing one of their matches with no commercial breaks and on a big show, because they're doing a wonderful job. I understand why they got Otis. Can they please hurry up and ditch the, modern day little Tokyo and the clueless blonde bimbo that looks like a deer caught in the headlights of a fucking John Deere tractor?
Well, the tractor keeps mowing, Jim. For the World Heavyweight Championship, Damian Priest, the champion, versus Drew McIntyre.
Boy, I'm wondering what they're going to do here, because if they take it off of Drew this soon after he got it, aren't they just saying, okay, this didn't work? Or won't it hurt him in some fashion in his standing in the community, in the eyes of the fans? But if Drew, because didn't Drew get beat the last time they clashed at his castle? I think he did. Will he lose two clashes in a row? To me, they're trying to.
Hey, for the record, previously I just looked it up. He lost to Roman Reigns at Clash at the Castle in 2022. 30 minutes, 47 seconds.
Well, I didn't need to. When I ask you what time it is, don't tell me how to build the watch. I didn't need that much detail. But the point is, would he get beat again? Even though Damian Priest is still
that guy,
he's a world champion there. I think that Drew McIntyre is still a level above in the fans' eyes. They haven't got Priest all the way over to that status yet, have they? And then unless Punk gets a nonstop from Chicago to fucking Glasgow, and interferes to continue that story, I think Drew McIntyre has to win, and I'm not sure how that would affect Damian Priest.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about here. I was thinking the same thing. Punk interferes. It cost Drew McIntyre another big match, another world title opportunity. But
the frustration would boil over if a man did that to you or I, where another championship, another great moment foiled.
That's the feud. He put him out of action and then gloated about it and then put it on a shirt. And Punk did not back down. He's cost him title matches, been at ringside making faces at him, whatever it may be. So that's an option, and that would help Damian Priest because it doesn't help him to immediately get the belt off him.
Yeah.
However, Drew, if he did win the belt, going into a feud with CM Punk, who appears to be healing up, that's intriguing. That's a world title feud right there. But again, what happens with Damian Priest?
But now bear in mind, and he'll love it, they may boo fucking Punk out of the building because even though he's foiling the heel, he ain't the heel in his hometown or home country, or I don't know. He might be from Osborne, Missouri, Drew McIntyre. I don't know, but they're saying it's his home area. So Punk but that'll be one of those Bret Hart in the United States and Canada reactions. It's going to be good either way because it gets over.
And finally, Jim, an I Quit match for the undisputed WWE Championship. The champion Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles.
Hey, I get what they're doing here. At least they're freshening it up. We saw Cody and AJ, but now there's a stipulation, and AJ's a full-fledged heel. They've shot an angle. They've done their due diligence on this, but we know that Cody is not going to say I quit to AJ Styles. But that points out that it's going to be a very good match, and I'm sure it's going to have a wonderful finish. But that points out the position that WWE's in right now is unprecedented. As an old friend of mine used to say, who shall remain nameless because he probably wouldn't want me to tell people he was knocking his employer, but he said, I got a bird's nest on the ground over here. I mean, he had an easy job and he was luxurious pay, right? They don't have to have a big hot match. They don't have to have Austin and The Rock in the main event of a pay-per-view because there's no more pay-per-view. It's on pay-per-cock. And they get their money. And people are watching it because it's a fucking fraction of the amount to get a streaming subscription for the entire month as it used to be just to get one fucking pay-per-view from the WWF. And they're going to a place that's starved for major events, so they're selling out at the highest ticket prices they've ever had for an arena event, I believe, is what they're... Or it's going to be the biggest arena gate ever if it fills up because of the prices. For a fucking placeholder show with 5 big matches. And it's going to look tremendous on television. And they don't need to do it. This week for SmackDown, which we'll talk about in a second, they were at the Yum Center on Friday night. 20,000 seat building. I'll give you a heads up. I'm probably going to ask how many people they ended up having. But then the UFC was there the following night. And the UFC guys and Cody Rhodes were on the Fox local station morning news because of SmackDown, emanating live from the Derby City in our major arena. And they were talking about the UFC event. They're renting these buildings 2 nights in a row now. And I wonder how much more integration of production and load in and staffing and whatever, they're going to do. But I mean, they're grossing more money than ever. They own these 2 major companies that are renting these NBA arenas back to back and putting respectable, if not sellout crowds in them. And they don't even need to come up with a fucking main event that'll sell tickets. Can you imagine if I may have actually lasted without going out of my mind and want to commit homicidal mayhem longer than I did in Stamford on that creative team if we didn't have to come up with main events that sold tickets and pay-per-views. The tickets are already sold before they know what the matches are. And the people are seeing the pay-per-views for free. Am I rambling?
No, you're just having a, moment.
Well, let's Clash at the Castle.
Clash at the Castle, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Another afternoon show here on
No,
the East
wait a
Coast.
minute. I saw that it was 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
Hold on.
Check that.
Is this the previous poster? Let me see.
I don't know. Some box just
WWE
popped up on my goddamn
Clash
deal.
at the Castle 2024. Start time, I guess I have to put. Start time.
You're not as quick at this as you used to be.
It says 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so that's neither.
11 a.m. for the countdown. Unless somebody clips the red and green wire during the countdown, the pay-per-view will be at noon. So they got that going for them. Would you like to move on to talk about the SmackDown?
Yes, let's talk about SmackDown.
Yes. Oh, yes, sir. I mentioned a minute ago, they had Cody on the local, WDRB is the local Fox affiliate. They had him on the morning news Friday morning to promote the live event. And, again, and actually I didn't know until afterwards, but Gilbert Corsi, who used to be our OVW announcer, is the anchor guy on the 4 o'clock news. And he did a sit down with Cody, I guess that aired later that night. I missed, but I saw his appearance in the morning. And again, this is another reason why that people can look at this company and these people like that they're some kind of legitimate professionals and big deals and celebrities. Because you see so many guys that do local television, if it's an indie show or if it, whatever, whoever it is. And some of them just can't help it that they're 5'8". But they show up dressed as whatever. They look like whoever. Guy could be in the parking lot of Kroger. They really don't understand. They're just promoting the show, but they use a lot of indie wrestler speak or speak of wrestling in the bubble or whatever. With Cody, he doesn't look like a badass like Stone Cold Steve Austin or a bodybuilder like when Triple H was the guy, but he looks like somebody. He looks like a star. He's taller than all the newscasters, male and female. He's wearing a fucking custom-made suit. He's got that big title belt. You can tell he's a celebrity. He's well-spoken. He has a Louisville connection. He lived here in Hillview while he was in OVW. He knows he sounds like a professional something, right? When he's speaking to people, he's pleasant. He has the demeanor. He promotes the thing, but he answers their questions. And he's a good spokesman. And then he brings kids in with the souvenir title belts and blah, blah, blah. And they do the ticket plug. That's why they want a guy like that in that position, because he's got to fucking look like somebody. You can't just go in there looking like the guy that's pushing a shopping cart at the grocery. And because they're on network TV and shit, they get spots like this. But anyway, you see what I mean about some of the guys just showing up looking like Ned.
I do.
As Teeny would say.
That's not just wrestling. That's life right now. No one understands that sometimes not everyone can pull off I'm going to dress like whatever the fuck, like I don't give a shit because I don't give a shit. Because some people do give a shit. But too many people don't dress up for anything now.
They better be introducing you as the newest billionaire that is financing a rocket to Mars if you come in dressed like a bum, or elsewise that's what most people are going to think you are, as a fucking bum. So anyway, speaking of bums, and the overriding story in this SmackDown was that Cody Rhodes is in the back at the loading dock at the KFC Yum Center, and he's waiting on AJ Styles to get there, and he's going to beat the teetotal living shit out of him. And they did some nice beauty shots. I said I was going to ask you, what was the crowd in Louisville at the Yum Center?
I don't have the final count, but as of the day of, there were 479 available tickets, 8,852 tickets distributed. But again, usually these things sell out. Yeah. I don't remember if they announced it was a sellout or not.
Well, they did, but the point is they would have been disingenuous had they done that. Because the KFC Yum Center seats 21 or 2,000 people. Somewhere around there. It's fucking massive. They were using a half setup there, but they got there close to 10,000 people. They filled up their setup. But the only other place they could have gotten this crowd in town is Freedom Hall. And honestly, nobody goes to Freedom Hall anymore because now it's 70 years old, and they got the Yum Center. It's this big time television. But anyway, so out comes the Bloodline at the first of the program, and Paul Heyman looks like he's going to the chair. He's stuttering. He's flummoxed. He's flustered. He's scared shitless of the new Samoans, right? And the story was that he was there at the behest of the new tribal chief Solo to make the statements, the double proclamation that he's setting the record straight until Roman's return. Solo is the head of the table. And then the fans start chanting, "We want Roman." So they're calling for this already. This is a bird's nest on the ground. They've got it made. They don't even have to climb into it. And then Paul says, tonight, Solo has declared the double proclamation and he puts the various Tongas over. Tama Tonga is now the right-hand man, and Tonga Loa is now the infamous Tonga Loa. What do you think about them nicknames, Brian? Does that strike fear in the hearts of mortal man?
Well, he was the MFT. That was never explained. Now he's the right-hand man. Okay, that kind of works. My right-hand man. I mean, the way they announced it. I mean, everyone uses that phrase. It's not like a unique phrase in any way.
It doesn't really strike terror.
Brian Hildebrand was your right-hand man. I remember people saying, like, everyone uses that phrase about everything. And then the infamous Tonga Loa, you probably have to explain why he's infamous or show why he's infamous.
I just cut an infamous promo, according to what YouTube said.
You did.
But anyway, Paul said that and said thank you and good night. And Solo, whoa, hold on. Solo says, no, you need to thank the Tongas for saving you from Kevin Owens last week. And they get in close on him and shoulder bump him and menace him. And he thanks them in a groveling fashion. And basically, Tama Tonga says, we did it on orders from the tribal chief. Or elsewise we'd have let him kill you. And so then Heyman said, well, you know, and this was hilarious also. He said, I got here early to do, in my capacity as a wise man, and I did wise man things. And he's heard that Kevin Owens is looking for the bloodline. And Brad, you saw it. But folks, you're never going to guess what happened as soon as Paul said, Kevin, they've been out there for 10 minutes. But as soon as Paul said Kevin Owens is looking for the bloodline, his music played, and out he became. And Kevin Owens runs down to the ring and jumps in the ring on all three of these Samoans. Now, I can believe Road Warrior Hawk, Dr. Death Steve Williams, the Barbarian would just come in by himself and tackle these three Samoans. But isn't Owens stretching credulity, or are people just overlooking that these days because it's part of the programming?
I think people overlook it. It's the babyface running in there to do something. Now, he can't do much damage, or then it's completely silly, but...
Well, they did a good... It was a big flustery thing where he didn't just drop down and sell right away. They had to make him... He made him fight for it. But they stopped him, and then the Street Profits came in to help, and then Owens nailed everybody with a chair, and then they had hurt feelings and ill will toward each other into the commercial break. Where afterwards, Solo grabbed Paul like he was about to leave, I think, the building. And Solo stopped him and says, if you don't get a 6-man tag match for us tonight with these fucking guys, then the main event's going to be in the locker room with you versus Tama Tonga. Humming. So we got our 6-man. So they set this up where we know at the top of the program what we're going to get at the end and what in the world's going to happen. Your thoughts on this segment and this latest part where the bloodline, these three Samoans are going rogue on Paul E. big time.
Unless that's a big swerve, which it probably isn't, but it's important to throw that out there as an option just because the other option is babyface Paul Heyman. You know, they got the fans really chanting, we want Roman loudly. We don't know how long they're going to have. We don't know when that's going to happen. SummerSlam's not too far away. But that's the only other thought I had watching this, and it may be unreasonable, but kind of like the Ole Anderson suckering in Dusty Rhodes thing. They still set on TV their main priority is getting back the title. What if they use something like this, bloodline issues, to trick someone like Cody Rhodes to do something? Again, maybe I'm trying to think of something because it's going very slow.
Yeah.
So it gives you lots of time to think of options. But I don't know. Otherwise, I think it's good. And I like Tonga Loa, or Tama Tonga. I believe him in this role. I think he's good in this role. And we'll see what happens with Jacob Fatu. That's still the big mystery.
Yeah, where is my, oh where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all alone? I want my Samoan.
crazy idea I just had. So Roman's not working full-time, and we don't know when he's going to be back, but he'll be back to take care of this. The Rock has kind of established himself as wanting to be the leader. We don't really know who's Solo or his bloodline. We don't know if they're reporting to The Rock or it's just Solo running rogue and using Heyman. What's to say Jacob Fatu doesn't come in and say, I'm the head of the fucking family?
And they wouldn't buy it if he was new. If he was brand new, they'd never seen him before, they wouldn't buy it.
It's very Game of Thrones-esque. All of a sudden, another family member shows up on the island to announce he's the king.
Well, then they'd have to do a DNA test and figure out that Sika fathered him first or whatever the case. But nevertheless, otherwise, blowing through SmackDown briefly, as we are wont to do these days. And speaking of blowing through things briefly, Jade and Bianca beat Indy and Candy. And again, putting Candy LaRue in with any of these girls now, she looks so meek and outlaw indie. Not like Indy Hartwell, but like indie fucking independent fucking wrestling. Jade and Bianca's like watching two of the WNBA players beating up an 8th grade point guard. And then they beat up two more teams, the two teams that they're wrestling in the three-way at the Clashing Castle. They beat them up too. And then the Lucha Heels beat Apollo Crews up in the back. And then Nick Aldis was short of a match. And coincidentally, L.A. Knight walked up and asked Aldis where Logan Paul was. And Logan Paul was not here on this program night. He did a pre-tape later on where he did a great promo about fucking L.A. Knight, but he apparently was really playing in the World Tetris Tournament. Did you hear about this? Read about this?
Did you get an invite?
I haven't played in 30 years, especially competitively. I lost my Game Boy somewhere. But he was playing, I saw a picture, he was playing like a 12-year-old kid in Tetris. That's where he went to be in the World Tetris Tournament.
There are no age groups. It's just all ages are equal.
I assume that there's only weight limits. There are weight categories that you have to apply for, but not ages are open. But appointed now, here's something else that apparently is a thing that gets national attention. In addition to the dirt racing and the bull riding on network TV, but yet wrestling can't get on. All right. So then we had, did you enjoy the match between Johnny Sameface and Grayson Waller? With, of course, Tommaso Ciampa and Austin Theory in the corners. What'd you think of that match, Brian?
What I thought was when the music hit and they came out, the only thing I noticed, a small glimmer of hope. Ciampa didn't smile while Gargano was smiling. I'm like, ooh, maybe they'll turn him heel and away from Gargano, but then I realized it'll just be them wrestling each other on the main roster. I didn't watch this match. I had other things to do.
Very good. You got two world-class talents there that have completely useless partners, and they're the ones wrestling while the world-class talents are in the corner. But, at this point, Brian, I was honestly thinking that I need to change my ways, my health, my mental and physical health. It is starting to wear on me. And I was thinking I needed some kind of artificial stimulation or sustenance or solution to ease my pain, to help with my concentration because my mind was wandering on this program. All the things that I realized that our friends do over at CB Distillery. And so what I did was I got into my supply of CB Distillery targeted formulations made from the highest quality clean ingredients with no fluff and no fillers, just pure effective CBD solutions, and I solved some things. Don't you love it when you can solve things with CBD?
I don't know what you solved, but What did you solve?
Well, I solved my pain. You know, I had pain Friday after watching this show, and I took the CBD and I solved it. And I didn't have any more pain till I did my yard work yesterday. And unfortunately, I did too much yard work. Even CBD won't solve that. I don't know if goddamn propofol will solve this. But, and also, the CBD distillery products helped me with my concentration. And they support my health. And they're going to make me sleep better the next time I get the chance to go to sleep. So that's all positive things. Do you know that 81% of customers are calmer? 80% of customers say that CBD helped them with pain after physical activity. And 90% of consumers that were targeted with this poll said they slept better with CBD. And 2% said that they like to sleep out underneath their new evergreen trees. But that's just because it's such a long walk to water them. Would you like to know how you can get some fine products from CB Distillery, Brian?
Yeah, those statistics are rather benign, so I wasn't going to argue with you. Yes, let me know the details now.
Yes. Well, over 2 million customers have done what I'm asking you people to do, and that's patronize these fine people with their solid 100% money-back guarantee, because clean out your medicine cabinet, reset your health, natural quality clean products, cbdistillery.com, and use the code JCE for 20% off. JCE, 20% off at cbdistillery.com. And that way, even this wrestling will seem exciting to you. You know, so if you take enough of this stuff, you can imagine that if you just go back in the recesses of your mind, you can imagine that you're on an island in the South Pacific with a floating wrestling ring, gently,
that's not exactly how it
gently
works.
bobbing on the waves, and it'll relax you and you'll go to sleep.
If you need help falling asleep or you feel some aches and pains from everyday life, CB Distillery, the best CBD, they have it. At there.
They have it there at them they do. And here's another thing. If you need help falling asleep, the last thing you want to do is ask your spouse, because that could give them the entree, the opening to start giving you a preparation every evening. And then you'd never know.
No, once again, I don't know where you're going, but CB Distillery.
Well, that's the way. Once that your significant other, that wants their inheritance early, makes you comfortable by them handing you something to take before you go to bed at night. You know, that lead poisoning, the heavy metals, it can come on gradually. You never really know it until suddenly, boom, there your kidneys turn into a car bumper. You're dead. So get the stuff from cbdistillery.com, because they have no real personal problem with you. Now, if you've ever pissed these people off at cbdistillery.com, maybe you don't want to take what they send you, but if otherwise, you're anonymous to them. So trust them before you trust your husband or wife.
You can trust them. Let's just end with that. CB Distillery, you can trust them for your CBD.
Well, you certainly can. Well, you know who you can't trust, Brian? You can't trust AJ Styles. You cannot trust him because he turned on Cody Rhodes last week when he teased the retirement. And now at 9 o'clock, imagine this. Here's the thing. Back in my day, Vince used to have us office folks there at 11 o'clock in the morning on a TV day, and the talent had to check in by 1 o'clock. But now AJ Styles and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson got there just at the 9 o'clock hour, pulled right into the loading dock, and Aldous was out there with security because he'd got the tip-off that they had finally got to the show. They must have been lost coming from the airport. And so Cody is daring AJ to fight. AJ's daring Cody to come at him, but he can't get through the security back in the loading dock. And so Cody, and this was a nice touch, turned around and ran through Gorilla and ran to the ring and with no music playing. And the people popped, oh, there's Cody. And he calls AJ out. Get your ass to this ring right now. And the security is run out there also. And even though they played the music for the wrestler to come to the ring that the security is running out to block from coming to the ring. I'm not sure about the fucking logic there, Brian, but we'll give him that. And AJ's just mocking Cody. You know, you think I care what you want, blah, blah, blah. I want a title shot at Clash at the Castle. And that's when I realized, my God, they're big. Vince McMahon would have lined up everybody on the creative team like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in a garage and shot them if they announced the main event world title match a week before the fucking show 30 years ago. But we live in different times. And so Cody says, well, you've got a title match, but it won't be a regular match. I'm going to make you say what you should have said last week. I quit. It ties back into the fake retirement. And Nick Aldis okays it, and Cody then beats up security, and then they hold Cody while AJ dives in and takes a cheap shot. And so the angles are good with this, and the people are fired up, and they're reacting to it, and everybody's performing it well. And they're getting away with it because of all the reasons why I said they need eyeballs. They don't have to charge anymore. I mean, they're obviously they're charging it to get into Clash at the Castle through the ass, but those people have already bought most of the tickets before they knew what they were going to fucking see. So now it's like they're going to make a fortune, and a ton of people are going to watch this, and it doesn't really need to be the end-all, be-all WrestleMania main event every month like Vince used to fucking crack the whip on. It's like, oh, we'll have a good match and they'll tell the story. People have already paid anyway. I've never seen any promotion in a position like this before. Have you?
No, and that's the thing. Cody and AJ's a fine little program that they're doing on TV after he lost the previous match to set up this midday in America pay-per-view that they're going to make a bunch of money from. And the match isn't going to sell one ticket. And it doesn't need to. It's insane. When you really spell it out and put it out there, it's a weird thing to wrap your head around, that there aren't really too many wrestlers or matches that draw. It's the pack. It really is what Vince McMahon always wanted right now. It's the package.
Yeah.
The package has to be hot. You have to have the right people in there, and you have to be doing the right things, but WWE announces tickets on sale. People buy them before they know anything.
And then it doesn't matter that it's on at noon, because if you've got the Cox subscription, you can start watching it anytime you want to. And it all counts. It's not like the pay-per-view. If you came in late, you came in late. And then DVRs came around and VCRs and etc., but it was a pain in the ass. This is, let me just see why that Clash at the Castle from today was on. It's 7:30 now. I'll just watch it for fucking nothing.
No, but I think they've done a good job since the pay-per-view. I thought that was the blow-off, but they've done enough to make me intrigued about the next match, and the last match was really good. Now here's a I Quit match with the guy he's been feuding with for a month. It'll probably be a really good match. What do you put on last, Cody's match or Drew McIntyre's match?
Boy. Depends on what's going to happen in the finish. If Drew isn't winning, he'll go on next to last. If he's winning, I think it's got to be last. But we'll see. But did you notice, speaking of timing, after the break of that where Aldis had okayed that match and been in the middle of that big schmoz with AJ and Cody, they go to the break. They come back, and one of the backstage interviewer guys is at Aldis's office, and Jade and Bianca come out the door and say, we just had a long conversation with Nick Aldis. Apparently not too long, because he was at the ring less than 5 minutes ago, right? But they forget about these things. And that's where they made the triple threat match. And then LA Knight beat Carmelo Hayes and did a promo on Logan Paul. And did you see the fight between Refrigerator Jax and Mia Yim?
I did. I was hoping you did. A lot of the listeners were intrigued by what you would think. You know, you see this happening, and I'm like, oh, God, Jim's going to talk about it. Let me pay attention. And then it turns out better than you could ever hope for.
Well, there's Tiffany Stratton. And I agree, she does have some size to her. It looks like an athlete. I'm not sure the Valley Girl, I can't do it. You know, the Valley Girl promo helps anybody at this point, but anyway, yeah, Tiffany. But she's telling the Refrigerator, hey, I've got your back because people are jealous of you like me, whatever. And then she walks off, and Mia Yim walks up into the Refrigerator's face. And by the way, did you see that she recently tweeted a picture of herself posing in a locker room kitchen area in front of a refrigerator with the mirror?
No.
So you can see, yeah. Oh, yes.
I did not see that. I did not.
Either her Twitter or her Instagram or whatever, the kids are posting pictures of themselves these days. It's the deal where there's a mirror across from something. So you take a picture of yourself in the mirror and you see what you're standing in front of, and she's in front of a refrigerator. Obviously just a mere coincidence. But nevertheless, Mia Yim bows up in her face and throws a drink in her face. Imagine that. We were just talking about that angle earlier. And the Refrigerator is going to go to toss Mia Yim over a table, and as she does, she slips and falls in the drink that has just been thrown and busts her ass down, and then jumps up. Like, maybe if I get up fast enough, nobody saw that, and the referees are starting to come in. And she slips and falls again. Boom, it goes the other way. And it's chaos, and the referees are separated. But yeah, she took more bumps than the girl she beat up in the course of the thing. And
when she went down the second time,
yeah,
because I was watching it live, thinking Jim's going to talk about this. Let's see what she does, and then she slips twice. Oh,
because the first time you can even laugh at yourself, right? And you can say, "Well, okay, it added to the chaos of the scene." But when you go down a second time and you're not trying to, that's when you get pissed, right? You're like, motherfucker. Oh, God damn it! So. She barely escaped that confrontation that she instigated alive. But at least she had padding to break her fall. It was all stuffed into the ass of her tights. So, and
yeah,
then...
we haven't seen that poor girl. She's squashed in Saudi Arabia again, have we?
Oh, yeah, that's, if nobody thought to scrape her out of the crack of Jax's ass, she may still be up in there serving as some kind of muffler, baby. And then Bayley goes to the ring and starts doing a promo, and in milliseconds, she was interrupted by Piper and Chelsea, and I read, what is this, fucking Glow again? There are more women than men on this show. I skipped ahead to Logan Paul did the pre-tape from somewhere with a very nice quality camera. Video was impeccable. And then we were at the main event with Owens and the Street Profits against the Solo and the Tongas. Sounds like a fucking beach music group from Norfolk in the fucking 60s. And they were standard. They went a minute to a break. They did some other stuff. And then basically, Owens got disqualified for hitting somebody with a chair, and the heels beat the baby faces up, and they triple powerbombed Owens through the announce desk. And it's kind of standard WWE fare for the company that has not a care, because they are aware, mon frere, that they have all the market share. And they don't need to do shit. And that's pretty much what they did in this program, was barely above the level of jack shit.
Hey, a rumor going around that Ricochet gave notice, and then word came out that things are still up in the air, but his contract's coming up. Obviously, AEW would probably want someone like him, and they'd probably blow it with someone like him. His fiancée, Samantha Irvin, works for WWE. We probably have seen probably because of the way things are, the peak of where they're going to push him to. What do you think's going to happen?
How old is he?
Hold on.
Because that bears on what I'm going to say. Here's the thing. Some people talk about Cody quit
35.
and went out.
Wow.
Okay. Cody quit and went out on his own and bet on himself, right? The phrase bet on yourself. Always bet on yourself. Problem is, if you're not the youngest horse in the race and there's not a lot of viable options and time for you to go somewhere and bet on yourself, then that may be a mistake. Ricochet is never going to be the WWE champion, right? I'm sorry, but just realistically, not even one of the two of them. He's not going to be. He's going to be a featured baby face. It might be hard to make him a heel, but he'd be a kind of a featured baby face on the card, not a main event level guy usually, or possibly at all. But their starting salaries over there, and he's on, I'm sure, more than starting, are quite lovely. And his wife works there, and it's the number one company, and it ain't going anywhere. And he's 35. If he gets another 3-year contract there, he's 38. Then he can do some independence, and he's made a nice income, and he's not going to look like a fucking idiot by the time he finishes that 3 years like he would be if he was over in AEW. Or he can be over in AEW where he might even get more money out of Tony because Tony. But even huge stars that go there are nullified. And so if he went there, it's not like he can make himself a star in AEW because nobody else has been able to except for MJF. And it's not like if you're an already established star, you will stay as important as you were on the day one in AEW. So he'd be taking a little more money for a company that who knows what the fuck is going on at the whims of this, the child with the action figures. And then when you're 38 and 3 years is up, you can go to Indies as one of the fucking flippy fly guys on that show, or you've been working for the number one company in the industry. But it's not like that he can leave and come back to the WWE and be the world champion or a main event guy, is it? Because he ain't going to be anyway.
I don't think he'll be a world champion in WWE. He owns his name, so he has that going for him. AEW would probably give him a lot of money and give him the satisfaction of working the kind of matches for the length of time he wants with the guys he wants. Him and Ospreay have a history.
Oh, boy. I can imagine what they could come up with. It'd make Cirque du Soleil look like crippled fucking senior citizens.
If you're being booked like shit, and you know you've been booked like shit for years, and you probably aren't going to have any hopes of ever being a world champion or anything, and Tony Khan's willing to give you a whole bunch of money to 1 day a week work with your friends and do what you want to do, it's easier to convince those guys than it is a main eventer.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's like, am I an unimportant part of a good program or a sometimes big part of a bad program? Well, good luck to him. Hopefully he bounces back from this. See what I did there?
I see what you did. We'll find out what happens. We'll let the listeners know. But that's SmackDown, ladies and gentlemen.
It certainly was. And here's my question. What in the world is going on in the 605 Arcadian Vanguard Network world this fine week?
Another exciting week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, or through all the shows, and get information about the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Of course, the wrestling news, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, look for the wrestling news. or go directly to thewrestlingnews.com. Free daily wrestling morning newscast from the Wrestling News. Also want to make mention, Jim, I am right now, along with Jace Nacarado, even John Fell's helping us out, but it's a team effort. Going through the archives, we are putting together a Scott Cornish tribute episode.
Oh, excellent.
It'll be a 605 special. Give us some time. We want to do it right. But one of the funniest guys, one of the wittiest guys, he was explaining, you were there. Do you remember the Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl Banquet? When
yes.
Mike Lano tried to give a plaque to Dory Funk Jr.? But I had the table in front. I say I had it. That's where my table was. But I wasn't there often because I was doing videos for Dennis. At that table, I had Scott Cornish, Mark Carluzzo, and as Scott put it, a bunch of people who either couldn't or wouldn't talk. Fred the Elephant Boy. And as Scott put it, the best thing you could say about him is his brother's worse. Franz Schumann from Austria.
Oh my God.
Not really proficient in English. John Owen and I believe his dog Corey. They were there. And Kevin Lawler, who was very quiet and subdued.
He was probably just wondering, how the fuck did I get at this table?
But we're working on that now for all the fans of the Superpodcast and of Arcadian Vanguard, the various shows across the network. We're working on a Scott Cornish tribute right now, so stay tuned for more information about that. Go through the archives of Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam and Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon to hear Scott's appearances on there, and check out the new episodes as well. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership! Go through those archives and hear what a genius he was. 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast, The Mothership.
The Mothership. Well, before we take any more rides on the Mothership, let's take a ride over to the newest hit series on Vice TV, Who Killed WCW, where we saw the first episode, the second of the 4-parters this week, Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Check your local listings where it applies. And, you know, so far, it was an uneventful first episode because you have to explain who the victim is before you commit the murder, right? You can't just kill some random person. So this was setting up the preamble to WCW and how it got successful enough to be killed. But it was kind of it's the Eric Bischoff show, the Eric Bischoff explanation so far. Some other talking heads come into it that hopefully we'll hear more from them. But they started in 1992-93 with Bischoff's arrival. And as I was telling you before we started recording, they skipped the first 5 years where, in effect, Who Killed WCW, which time? They killed it once before, they resurrected it, and then killed it again. And we're coming in on the start of the second life. So I thought, and I know we've talked about the various problems when TBS bought the company from Crockett and what all went on, but as a preamble to this establishing show, I think we ought to establish more of how they got to the point where they started, shouldn't we? Does that make sense?
When you think about everything that happened in 1988, and then, of course, the road to Eric Bischoff getting there, and Eric Bischoff, according to this, never even heard of WCW before he
he'd been working for Vern Gagne for 5 years, and he never watched another wrestling show. You know, he was trying to, well, more on him in a minute.
But I think the documentary had a lot of the voices who were there in the mid-90s and the late 90s in terms of the Turner side. But the players who were there in the early 90s, the Jack Petricks, the Jim Hurds, again, like you said, that was the first death, that whole bunch.
Yeah. And Kevin Sullivan is on this show, and I'm sure he probably made comments about it, but this, and I understand it would have needed to have been an 8-part series, blah, blah, blah. But it's fascinating because they killed the same victim twice, just more dramatically the second time. But go ahead.
No, that was kind of my point. The Turner executives from that point in 88
Yeah.
up until, when Jim Herd left in, 91, like, there was no real representation of what it was there, because Bischoff did a good job up to a point, obviously. Look at what happened with WCW, although I'm not saying he killed WCW. But Bischoff had an advantage that no one else had, because Bischoff got Turner to open up the books in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
From Turner Home Entertainment not getting all the pay-per-view money, to, who subsidized, what division subsidized what contract, to getting TV rights. These were things that Bill Watts didn't get, Kip Fry didn't get, Jim Herd didn't get, nobody got.
Well, and part of that, and let me at the outset, before we go back in time a little bit, before Bischoff, let me give Eric all the credit in the world for, he found his niche in wrestling eventually. He's a world-class television performer. As being Eric Bischoff, the evil promoter or promotion owner or whatever, he couldn't do anything physical. He may be a karate expert, but we saw when he tried to work, Jesus H. Christ. And so he was never a wrestling, even Vince, my God, could, at his age did that. He didn't have matches, but as a personality and as that heel authority figure or instigator or whatever, he's fucking brilliant. Because as with many of us in the industry, try to stay as true to life to your real character as possible in some instances, right? And that's what we got. Because the thing about, he was a salesman, and he says that, and he was, and you can tell because he's charming, and he's got a tremendous line of bullshit. And you can see how that he could sell people on that he knew shit that he knew nothing about whatsoever. And he blustered his way through a lot of this stuff just by having the glibness that either the wrestling people never talked to the Turner people in the right way because they couldn't. They spoke two different languages. And the Turner people didn't understand wrestling, and the wrestling people didn't understand the Turner people. Bischoff didn't understand wrestling, but he knew how to sell shit, and he knew how to manipulate, because that's part of the thing he'd been doing, selling commercials or selling TV time or selling TV shows to television people. And so that's why he was able to bluster, bluff, and in some cases just sell his way into not only that job, and we've talked about the fake letters of recommendation he had, people in the AWA. Poor old Mike Shields wrote one for TBS down there. So it was all a sales pitch that people bought. And he got into the spot. And then, as we are going to start to see later on in further episodes of the program, then he didn't know anything about wrestling, and he's trying to, figure out who to listen to and pick some of the wrong people. But where I took the first part that I took exception with, that Eric said, well, and it makes him look grander. It was this little Southern promotion that nobody ever thought was going to be successful.
Oh, they actually showed a clip of you behind that when he said it.
Oh, yes. Well, in all honesty, I think because this was the Dark Side of the Ring guys, Evan and Jason, the headlines about TBS buys Crockett interests, that was my B-roll from my archives. So they probably put a little shot in him of me to thank me there. But that's the point that Bischoff is trying to make, is, this little small promotion that nobody ever thought would be successful. And it was like it was a shits. TBS purchased the only competitor to Vince McMahon in the world, in the professional wrestling industry, at a time where it was closer, really, than it would ever get again, except for the Attitude Era. And in the space of a year and a half, turned it into a fucking moribund promotion that was so far out of fucking first place that it wasn't even funny. And it pretty much killed it again and turned the Turner Broadcasting executives against it. Because they were, Turner Broadcasting everybody in Turner Broadcasting didn't hate WCW when they bought it. Yes, there were some naysayers, but Steve Chamberlain was the guy in charge of Turner Home Entertainment. He loved the tapes. He loved this is going to be great. He's the one that was arranging for me to do all the home video commercials when they'd release a videotape. I've said Starrcade 86, that was the first tape that Turner Home Entertainment did with Crockett, was the first wrestling video that went gold before any events. Think about that. Because they pumped that commercial every week on the TBS show multiple times. That's why so many people saw me fall off that scaffold. Vince never pushed a video like that of WrestleMania that hard. And so Steve Chamberlain to Turner Home Entertainment, they were, oh yeah. There was a guy named Jeff Carr, who I believe was, I don't remember his title, but he was in programming. And he was always at the TBS studio tapings at the start. And a lot of them were involved. By 89, Chip Burnham, who was, they had a guy on this show that was the comptroller, which is a fancy name for the accountant, right? The guy who determines where money's going.
Right.
Well, Chip Burnham was from that department, and they ended up sending him on the road where he'd come in and give guys draws. And a draw for, in wrestling, a draw was an advance on your payoff for the night. And usually in a territory, it's like you need a draw, $50, whatever, but they would give guys $200 draws. And then at the end of the week, the guy wouldn't have a fucking check. But Chip was pushing money on people like a goddamn drug pusher. You want to draw? You want to draw? No, Chip, just give me my fucking check. I'm fine. And all the other guys, they're seeing these horrible houses. They're thinking, yeah, give me the draw. Somehow I'll make money on that. But anyway, they liked it. They were into the idea of having the wrestling promotion, this highly rated television product that they'd had on their air. Now they own the thing, the videos, the guys in commercials. Remember the Seasons Beating? They flew me down to Atlanta just to do a 30-second fucking commercial for the live TBS special. So they were all into it. And then they hired Jim Herd. And they hired Jim Herd because Jack Petrick, his wife knew who the fuck Jim Herd was because his wife was friends with Herd's wife. That is legitimately the goddamn story, folks. And because, as we've mentioned, he had worked as a studio director at KPLR in St. Louis when Muchnick did the wrestling show. And I'm not going to...
And learn nothing.
And learn nothing, because they didn't smarten the fucking TV crew up then. He read the formats. You know, he knew what match was coming up. But anyway, I'm not going to make this about Herd, but when you skip Herd, I'm sorry, but you skip the first death of WCW. He was the guy who made the only competitor to the WWF in 1988 into a joke that was not profitable for 8 fucking years. And that's what happened the first time around. As far as talent, we were talking about it, and we're going to review the Steamboat biography on the drive-thru. Look at the talent that he was single-handedly credited with from their own lips. I left because of this fucking guy. Ric Flair, the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering, Ricky Steamboat, Jim Cornette, Stan Lane, Terry Funk. He retired Terry Funk against his fucking will, made him an announcer. So he didn't stick around after his contract was up. It was a joke. The originator of the Ding Dongs. So by 1991, it was not even throughout the 70s and early 80s when TBS first became a cable entity. people, when they got the opportunity to get cable, you couldn't just sign up for it. Many markets didn't have it at all. Louisville didn't get cable, or at least my mother could not get cable at this house until after I moved away in 1983. But the point is, anybody who had the opportunity to get cable that was a wrestling fan got cable for TBS, for Georgia Championship Wrestling. It was the highest rated program on cable television. Not wrestling program, but program. And then by all the twists and turns that we've talked about, when Crockett got the TBS time slot in 1985 and the deal, Black Saturday, the whole 9 yards, not only were Crockett's syndicated ratings in the various markets comparable to Vince's, but the TBS program was still more highly viewed than Vince's primetime wrestling or All-American or the other cable programs that he had at the time. The ratings were very close. The talent rosters, depending on personal preference for the early through mid-'80s, they were comparable. And Vince grossed from 1985 on, thanks to WrestleMania, hopping in on pay-per-view and running more live events, having more wrestlers under contract. Where Vince was running 3 nights a week, Crockett might be running twice. Vince was grossing probably 3 times what Crockett was, but if you go with profit margin, they were closer than that because Crockett was grossing less but spending less. So it wasn't a goddamn runaway until 1988. And by 1990, it was a goddamn rout. Am I lying or exaggerating anything here?
No, a variety of things got it to the point where it got in 1988. And some of them are booking related, but a lot of them are Vince McMahon being competitive related. Screwing Starrcade. I mean, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin, really, if you think about it. Even though it's a year earlier than the sale, that was it. Once that happened, that was it.
You were looking at a Crockett family business in North Carolina with 7 employees and this blah, blah, blah conglomerate that Vince was putting together. And they were outmanned and outgunned, but the product and outfinanced, the product that was being presented and the popularity of same, again, from 1986 to 1988, would never be closer again for the next 8 years.
Yeah.
If what we were excited about when we heard TBS was buying the thing was that goddamn all we've needed is money and television and pay-per-view that we couldn't get on because we were just fucking Crockett from Charlotte, North Carolina. This is Ted Turner. We're not gonna go broke, or tap into, old Mother Crockett's retirement account to compete with Vince McMahon, and they can not only already have us on TV, but can get us on full-fledged pay-per-view. Great. We didn't know that they were going to buy something that was, that was one thing and turn it into another thing by putting people in charge. And this has historically been the thing when corporations get involved in wrestling. They put people in charge that either don't know anything about the fucking product or listen to the wrong people who they think do know about the product. And I mean, whether it's Jim Herd who killed WCW, Jim Herd should be convicted of war crimes in Nuremberg, because that was what really it soured the TBS executives on wrestling to win. By the time 5 years later, when Bischoff does get there, the people that never wanted it to begin with have won over many of the others, and the people have left and people have changed hands, and all some of these people ever saw was this fucking joke that didn't make any money and lost money.
Well, the other thing too is it's a personal issue, or it's about the person, I should say. I said before how Bischoff had a lot of advantages no one else had before him. A lot of that's on Bischoff being able to be that liaison between the wrestling company and the rest of Turner. You know, Bill Watts, for all of his positives, could not coexist with other executives of any sort.
No.
Kip Fry was a short-term thing, didn't know what he was doing, but he knew how to throw around a lot of money.
You know what Watts called him? Francis Ford Coppola. He was paying multi-millions of dollars to make major motion pictures.
And then Jim Herd always struck me as the kind of guy who became an executive, but wasn't an executive. Bischoff was driven.
Herd got mad that he didn't know anything about what he was talking about, so he had to then tell you what to do to show that he knew what he was talking about.
Bischoff saw he had an opportunity and said, how do I figure out how to make this work or make it a positive or keep it going? Because he wanted, it's self-preservation, obviously.
Yeah.
Herd didn't have that. Herd was, from all accounts, I wasn't there, just a cocky, obnoxious know-it-all who knew nothing.
Yes.
But I think that's the thing. Bischoff was the right guy to understand how to deal with executives from, especially the television division.
Well, and that's the thing. Before we dive into this actual program, I gave my impression of Eric as far as a performer. And I never worked with him when he was in any position of authority in any promotion. As we've told some stories, I was always on the other side of jousting from somewhere else. But I have heard from a variety of people whose opinions about wrestling that I would take because of their long tenure in it, that you would be surprised how little Eric Bischoff to this day still knows about wrestling. But because of the force of his personality and or his persuasive, charming manner and or the fact that he has worked for the big companies, he can still convince some people who don't know very much about wrestling that he knows a lot about wrestling. And see, this is the first time that this story has been told by a non-WWE entity. But it still doesn't mean that it's completely factual and not history being rewritten by the victor, because Bischoff, he's trying to make it a victory for him by absolving himself of responsibility for the deceasement of the corpse. So you have to take it with a grain of salt when he's telling his story, because he's trying to plead his case in court and get out of the guilty verdict. But we're going to find out this is like a Murder on the Orient Express type of thing, where there's a lot of people that are culpable for the crime. But Brian, anyway, so that in 1988, when they bought the thing, November 1st, that fateful, infamous day, a day that will live in infamy, through about 1993, they had diminished the wrestling promotion, formerly NWA, Crockett, WCW, whatever, into a thing where I was drawing more people for the Smoky Mountain Wrestling shows in Knoxville at the Coliseum than they were in either the Omni in Atlanta or the Civic Center in Philadelphia. Remember, they did 600 people in Philadelphia one night at the Civic Center. And that's what Eric Bischoff came into. So was there, in some respects, almost any way to go but up?
No, I mean, you couldn't go further down. I mean, I don't know how to answer. You couldn't go further down. But, you know, again, it wasn't, that's the thing that Bischoff, I think, got that Herd didn't. You know, Bischoff, like you said, may not be a bastion of wrestling honesty or knowledge, but he knew how to sell a package. Goes back to him being a salesman. So he could pretend like he knew about booking and shit. Whether he did or didn't matter. He knew how to sell everything around it to the people above him.
Yeah, well, and let's objectively...
Until he got to a certain point, and then, you know, everything blew up.
Yeah, and let's objectively talk about that for a second. When we get to 1992, 93, what is his experience in the professional wrestling business? He told the story himself. He and Sonny Ono, who apparently really was a friend of him, and that a friend of his, and he just brought him into wrestling business for some fucking reason. Put him on national television. Eric is a precursor of Tony Khan. Put my friends on TV. But they were selling a board game or a kids game, the Ninja Star Wars thing.
It wasn't a board game. It was kind of like a laser tag.
Laser tag thing. Yeah. Well, I meant board, but they throw the things with the Velcro.
Until George Lucas heard they got what Star Wars? What?
Yeah. It turned in from ninja to nunya. But anyway, so they want to buy time on the AWA wrestling program on ESPN, and he calls Vern Gagne. And think about, this is 1987. This is the dying days of the AWA, where the business was down, talent was down, Vern's local TVs had been decimated by Vince's invasion. He got the afternoon time slot on ESPN for some reruns and some new programs. And they needed every, source of income they could get. And Vern at that time, what was he? He was 1987. He'd been in his early 60s. And he probably heard this glib guy and said, hey, we got this TV, sell my TV. Syndicate my TV, get me on stations, or sell the time on my TV, or whatever. And that's the way that Bischoff gets a job in wrestling. Okay, let's say he wants to learn booking. I mean, let's be honest. We've talked about the AWA was a tremendous territory at one point, but by 1987, good Lord. And who was their booker, and what great booking was going on at that point? And if you're learning the wrestling business from Vern at that point, he's been in the business for 40 years. But as you'll recall, he didn't change a lot. I look like a chameleon next to the way Vern Gagne changed with the times. And then they make him a TV announcer because all their TV announcers were dying of old age. And he looked like John Davidson. But what was there even an AWA? When did the AWA officially go out of business? Probably right after Bischoff left, right?
91, yeah.
Well, no, maybe right before.
Because that's where I first saw him, on Sports Channel in New York. One weeknight, all of a sudden AWA was on. I was a kid. And Eric Bischoff was one of the hosts. They had Yukon John Nord and the Timekeeper, Mike George, all these great gimmicks. Team Challenge series. But I'd seen him there. And then AWA by early 91 was completely done. And that's around the time he showed up in WCW, 91.
And it would have been done beforehand had not Vern Gagne made a fortune in the wrestling business when he was one of the most powerful people in it, but it limped to a finish. So, and Google this for me, if you will. Oh, master of the Google platform. How old is Eric Bischoff? Because they had his wife on to say that in 1992, he was trying to sell this Ninja Star Wars game on wrestling television. They were making no money. They were bouncing checks.
Not 92. I think that would have Ninja Star Wars on TV would have been 87, 88.
87.
Yeah.
Okay. But then later on they said, that's when Bischoff said when he got the job in TBS, because Larry Zbyszko, who'd worked for Vern and was the son-in-law, plugged him, right? He said, yes, I was the happiest third-string announcer to get a job. In 92, he was making no money. Vern couldn't pay him. So the point is, he was selling a fucking Ninja Star Wars game, trying to sell it on wrestling TV in 1987. He gets a job with Vern Gagne, but then Vern can't pay him, and they're bouncing checks, and he gets a job with TBS that at least guarantees him some money, and they're happy as clams. How old is Eric Bischoff?
And he had also auditioned for WWE in between that period of time. Eric Bischoff is 69 years old.
Good Lord. I didn't realize he was so elderly.
He was good for his age.
Well, he looks good for his age, but look at his fucking age. But nevertheless, so if 1987 was 37 years ago, that means he was 32 years old. He's trying to sell games on wrestling television, and 5 years later, he's 37 years old, and they're bouncing checks. How does he got to be in his mid-30s without having a fucking, at least a comfortable means of support and some kind of career? And they're and how does he keep going bankrupt? Did he just go bankrupt a few years ago?
I believe he did. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that has to do with this. I don't know why you're...
No, can he not manage his money? How the fuck does this keep happening when all his adult life that he's doing all his television and working for all his big companies, and he keeps going bankrupt and bouncing checks? What the fuck? I thought he produced TV shows with Jason Hervey and things. I might not be a fan of all the shows that he's produced. Certainly there were some shows, right, that they produced.
I don't think they've worked together in a long time, so I don't think that's an active thing right now.
Well, goddamn, does he not know how to invest his finances carefully? He keeps getting in between a rock and a hard place.
Well, yeah, maybe just, things happen in life. You never know.
But anyway, so the point is that was his experience in pro wrestling. He's a salesman and an announcer for Vern Gagne in the dying days of his promotion. And then
Do you know why he became an announcer? Do you know why he became an announcer?
Because look at him.
No. Do you know why they had to push him on the air?
Why?
Because Larry Nelson went on a coke binge and never came back.
That's right. I'm sorry, I've heard that story.
Yeah, it's in his book, his wild and wacky book about the AWA late 80s hotel antics. Check it out wherever you find your favorite books.
And but poor Larry Nelson. But so the point, that's his experience in wrestling, and then within a year after he becomes the number 3 announcer in WCW, that's when he gives the executives a line of bullshit that he's fabulous at. He's like a fucking good-looking Heyman. And they hire him to run the fucking thing. And he bullshits them into fucking spending some money on it and doing some halfway decent accounting for once. But
do you see any similarities with the way Vince Russo got in?
Yes. Have a good line of bullshit at a period of time when people have given up all other hope, and then bluster into a goddamn accidental fucking successful period that you have no idea how you got into, accidentally probably, and then you don't know where it's going and you can't get it out of it, and you crash and burn. Which is why Jerry Jarrett said the measure of success in the wrestling industry is either, over the long term, is either the number of places that you have excelled in or the length of time that you have excelled in a certain place. And they fit neither of those categories.
Although I would label Bischoff a much bigger success.
Much bigger success.
Much bigger success than Vince Russo.
I'm talking about in wrestling administration. Bischoff is a great television performer, and he'll be that from now on. There's no age limit on that, or whatever. But as far as wrestling administration, he had about as long as old Shitstain did at wrestling writing that was successful, and then they've tried to relive it ever since, and it ain't worked because it was accidental to begin with. But anyway, that is where we begin the first episode.
But if I could just say something, you didn't really mention it. You're talking about the death of WCW. 91 was a depressing period. The period where you actually sent the funeral wreath.
Yes.
When Flair left the company and the fans in Baltimore took over the pay-per-view with "We Want Flair" chants.
Yeah.
That felt like the death of the company to me as a kid. Right there. Yeah, summer of 91.
Was kind of, because they made almost the complete break, because now, again, there was no Ric Flair. There was no Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. There was no, I want to add to the list of the people that Hurd ran off, Tully Blanchard, who he blocked completely. There was no Four Horsemen. There was no Rock and Roll Express. There was no really major connection besides Sting and Luger to the glory days of Crockett and to the period that those people remembered most fondly. And and it didn't resemble, it was starting to be a light version and a copy version of the WWF rather than the World Championship Wrestling that they had come to know. And that's when people just left in drooves, I say.
Yeah. Everyone, when I first started watching NWA in 89, by 91, other than like you said, the Steiners were still there, but not for long. Luger was still there, but not for long. Sting would stay there. But Muta was gone, even though it's a different circumstance. Muta was gone, Steamboat was gone, Terry Funk was gone, Sid Vicious was gone, Road Warriors were gone. Mean Mark popped up, he was gone. Like, just anyone who showed any promise disappeared. Any of your favorites were just one day gone off TV.
Well, and 4 or 5 different bookers a year will do that to you. But anyway, that's, as I mentioned, that's where we started here, and we won't go as long as Mama Cornette used to say, it won't be as long as it's been. But I have to preface this, Brian, with this question. WCW, Turner Broadcasting, has bought a company that had a great competitive product, was underfinanced, and had undergone a recession that it had nipped back up out of. And within 2 years, they turned it into the lowest drawing national television promotion pretty much in history until TNA came along. And I'm wondering, when 1993 comes about, it's been 5 years, what are the odds they're going to get it right the second time? What do you think the over-under was, the more or less? Were they going to kill it more, or were they going to kill it less?
If you're asking me what people thought in 93, or leading into 93, I think people thought WCW was going to continue to die because there was no real hope of anyone turning it around.
Well, see, if there had been a thing called DraftKings back then, you probably could have won some money on that. Because that's probably what you would have been saying in 1993, and that's what happened for another 3 years at least. And that's why everybody needs to have the brand new app from our friends at DraftKings, a new fantasy game. Depends on what kind of fantasies you've got as to whether you're over or under. But it's called Pick Six. And now that there's still NBA playoffing, because they do that, holy Jesus, I would say every day of the year, apparently, as long as we've been plugging it. Well, if you get more or less of a stat on the rebounds, the points, the assists, all that stuff, well, then you can win huge cash prizes if you use our code letters. See, this is all an under-the-table thing. The government is not supposed to know. This money's changing hands under very tenuous circumstances, so you got to use the code JCE after you download the DraftKings Pick Six app, and then you pick more or less of a stat between 2 and 6 players. And then you go up to the door and you do the secret knock. And when they open a door, you pull out your gat, you say, freeze.
No, you don't do that. Up. No, metaphorically speaking, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you're gonna end up with all the money.
You're not pulling your gat out at anyone.
Not pulling your gat? Well, you're gonna end up with all the money. Whether you're gatter or gatless, you're gonna end up with all the money. And just download the Pick Six app from DraftKings.
Use your mental gat.
Yes. And you're not shooting blanks when you're picking more or less of these stats and all the ways that the fantasy people know how to do things. You can do them here and win money. And right now, they pack more fun into less time. Well, that's always good, especially as you get older. Right now, if you use the code JCE, new customers are going to play $5 and get 50 in Pick Six credits. JCE is the code, And if you play with $5, they give you 50 in the credits that you can then give back to them in playing the games. And you'll make a ton of money someday. Only on DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Did
he's still not back from the shore.
Stuffington? Jasper Stuffington? I thought he was our VO guy.
He doesn't use his real name. I don't know why you would use his real name. That violates some kind of HIPAA or OSHA or...
HIPAA?
HIPAA.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a hypochondriac. Folks, I will remind you on this DraftKings Pick 6 disclaimer, 1 per new customer, non-withdrawable. Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See the terms now at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. And good luck to you all.
That's right. The crown is yours.
The crown is yours. But anyway, I'd like to crown Eric Bischoff because now we've come to the first episode of Who Killed WCW.
Wait, well, that wasn't the first episode?
No, that was what happened before the first episode picks up.
Oh.
And we gave Bischoff's basic history in the thing, which they set that up. And they also introduced a number of other players. I never met Brad Siegel. If Brad Siegel was one of the executives at the period of time that I was there, then he wasn't around the wrestling much. But I think I would have disliked him most of all. Tiny Tim. He looks and sounds like the illegitimate son of Truman Capote. And he makes no secret of the fact that he didn't like wrestling, didn't want it on this. He thought that he had made TNT. It's a big hoity-toity station and didn't want it to be tarnished with the wrestling. Was TNT ever thought of as goddamn Masterpiece Theater or public broadcasting or some kind of high-prestige fucking muckety-muck operation, Brian?
It certainly wasn't to me, but I think all these networks kind of see themselves that way. Like USA Network, same thing. I think they always saw themselves as being above the fray. And it's like, no,
yeah,
you got wrestling and the Cartoon Express. Shut up.
Yeah. And they had Janie Engel. It was good to see her. Janie was the long-suffering wrestling secretary. Anytime they had employees that had caused problems or had bad attitudes or people didn't like them, in Turner, they made him a secretary in the wrestling office, but she was the one that actually had experience, knew about the wrestling business and that we dealt with. And she's a wonderful person. And Kevin Sullivan, who, as I mentioned a minute ago, he could have and probably did provide some background on the first 5 years, but, they didn't have the time. But yeah, I would have beat the shit out of Brad Siegel, I think, because and felt pretty good about my chances going into it from the looks of him. And then they had the comptroller who said that he was flat out told it was career suicide if he helped WCW in terms of the bookkeeping or helping them make money or look good or whatever, because they didn't like that they had the wrestling company, and if you tried to help them, they would be mad at you. But also, even with the mismanagement at the top of everybody that they put in charge, even when somebody knew what the fuck they were doing, a la Bill Watts, they still, at that point, it had poisoned their minds on the wrestling company in general. And with this kind of attitude from the top, I wonder why they weren't doing well against Vince McMahon. So again, Bischoff as a motivator, when he comes in there with his line of shit, well, we can do this and that, at least he opened up some of those doors where they actually started trying again.
The biggest problem doesn't seem to be at the top. The biggest problem was the top being Ted Turner dictating that wrestling will always be there, and the executives under him, his top executives, all hating it.
Yeah.
And even though there's an edict that Ted wants it, They still don't want to help it. That's telling, too.
And then every time there'd be some kind of major fuck up with the wrestling company, those people got more and more ammunition. And they were derailed for a couple of years when they accidentally started making all that fucking money and they couldn't do what they wanted to do and say what they wanted to say. And as soon as 2000 hit and they were losing their fucking shirt, that's when they piled on with a vengeance. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. And yeah, I knew this was going to be another program where they blew the NWO, but goddamn, the NWO did not fucking discover the polio vaccine and etc. There's a lot more stories to tell, both in why WCW was over and why it went under. But Eric Bischoff was part of the NWO, so he's got to get that in there.
Well, no, I actually think the NWO was pretty huge.
It was pretty huge, but my God, we've heard it. It's on everything. A margarine commercial up pops there, and the NWO made margarine.
But the way you're saying it, you're making it sound like the NWO. I mean, again, the popularity increase in '96.
Yes,
a lot of it could be attributed directly to the NWO angle.
Yes. But God damn it. It's everywhere.
They were over.
And, you know, and that's another thing. How do you manage to fuck that up? They'll do it.
Creative control for Hulk Hogan. It seemed like everyone was pointing the finger at that if they weren't pointing the finger at Bischoff.
Well, but remember, Hulk Hogan's creative control didn't have anything to do with it. They had 45 people in 2 different groups of the NWO before it was over with. Everybody from soup to nuts was NWO something. And the ridiculous booking and etc. They mentioned the Disney tapings as a great idea of Bischoff's. They were universally hated by the fans. They were impossible to tape blocks of program like that and have your stories make any sense with the TBS program being taped every week. And it was a goddamn disaster. It looked like a game show. Am I misremembering this?
Well, it kind of misrepresented it, too. Unless you want to make the argument that the relationship with Disney indirectly led Eric Bischoff to being near Hulk Hogan's taping of Thunder in Paradise. So it's a positive because of that. Or just the relationship building between Disney and WCW, I don't know. Other than that, it was a syndicated show taping that they did months at a time.
Yeah.
Revealing all the finishes and title changes at a time where that still kind of mattered.
Yeah, or sometimes the ones that they had planned to do that didn't actually happen, which was even worse.
Yeah, when Dennis sued because he was a member of the NWA or whatever it was, and they had a big issue with the NWA title. I think it was one of the times, but those were syndicated tapings in front of almost like fake fans. I mean, they were real people, but they were told who to boo and who to cheer.
They had signs. Cheer and boo.
It was like a part of the tour at Disney. So again, for exposure and for any positives that came out of it, it's one thing, but those were unwatchable television shows. And they aired in New York like 2 a.m. Again, it was syndicated. It wasn't like it replaced a TBS show. He made it sound like they replaced a TBS show with these tapings. They never aired any of these on TBS.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess basically then the story's been told many times when Bischoff gets the meeting with Turner and the executives at the time, and he blurts out, well, we got to be competitive. We got to be head to head. Well, then, and he's telling the story because that's part of his charm, his self-deprecating humor. Then he's like, I got to figure out how to make this work. I don't know. I blurted this out. It is true, but, you know, at that point, they start the Nitro, Monday Nitro and Monday Night Raw, head-to-head battle, etc. And Brad Siegel, as I mentioned, second coming of Truman Capote, lightened up on wrestling a little because he wanted to beat, they were competitive with USA, and they wanted to do anything to beat USA. But then he's the same guy that said later on when Bischoff was trying to do that, he said, well, Eric had a maniacal desire to be number one and beat the WWF. Well, you just said the same thing about USA, right? But then they got into this is starting to foreshadow the beginning of the long malingering end. The Sting and Hogan angle. The Bischoff said, I heard that Vince planned out a year in advance. Well, why can't we do that? And Vince used to plan WrestleMania main events a year in advance, but he never kept half of that match in the fucking rafters of the arena for a year without letting them do anything. But they milked that for a year, and that was the biggest, I guess that was the biggest pay-per-view WCW ever did, right? Was Starrcade 97, Sting and Hogan?
I believe so. It could have been Goldberg and Hogan, but they gave it away on free TV.
Well, yeah. But it could have been after this fucking match, because that's the point of the story, this series. After this match, maybe no pay-per-view was ever going to be that big again because they botched it. And the story's been out there, but you hear Bischoff somehow saying it like it excuses what they did and there was a justification or a reason for it. But he admits that Sting was going to go over clean and beat Hulk Hogan and triumph for WCW, and then the NWO is going to come back and get some heat some other kind of way. And then he says, well, during the day, the finish got convoluted. And he won't come out and say that Hogan came in and changed everything. At one point, he said, well, the fast count came in, and then Bret Hart as referee. And, of course, Bret's saying that Bischoff insisted it would be great. And then later on, Bischoff made the comment that, well, it was apparent to Hulk and I that Sting wasn't nearly as excited about this opportunity. Something was off. And so Hulk said to Bischoff said, not today, his head's not right. Not today, his head's not right. So we're going to change what we've been building a year for and kill the fucking top babyface.
And by the way, just asking you, is that their way of saying that Sting was fucked up still at that time?
No, because later on, Bischoff says again, he thinks that Sting thought that Hogan was going to, he didn't use the word double cross, but maybe pull the rug out from under him, change things at the last minute. And so he came in with that attitude and manifested it. No, he knew what was going to happen. He predicted it. It fucking happened. When they called him in the room with Hogan, he said, well, here's where he changes the finish. And guess what he did? He changed the fucking finish. What do you expect Sting to be? Sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and waterfalls? Oh, thank you, Hulk. He probably had a sour attitude because it was, well, I knew this was coming. Sting's not a guy that argues. He's not confrontational. But if you blatantly fucking slap him in the face with something, and remember they've said before, well, Sting didn't have a tan or he didn't look like he was in shape. They've come up with every goddamn weaselly explanation instead of saying flat out, Hogan did this whole thing and then decided he didn't want to do the fucking job. And Bischoff, because he was swinging on Hogan's fucking dick for the whole run of this thing, backed him up even though he knew it was bullshit. And they killed Starrcade, they killed Sting, they killed Bret Hart his first night in, the highest priced wrestler they'd ever fucking hired, except for Hogan, who got paid every time somebody took a shit in the bathroom. And while everybody else is blaming Hogan and to some extent Eric for this major debacle that set them on the road to ruin, Bischoff won't come out and say, yeah, fucking Hogan, in hindsight, I should have never let him get by with it. He did it, whatever the fuck. He can't come out now. And even, what's Hogan going to do for him now? Push him around the retirement home? He can't come out now and say, yeah, the fucking egotistical lying son of a bitch fucked us all. But yeah, so Starrcade 97, that was fun. And they never, they obviously 98 and part of 99 was still huge, but that was their peak on pay-per-view because people lost faith. And then when, 2-3 months later, they've got Mike Tyson and Austin in the WWE. That's when Kevin Sullivan had told Kevin Nash, you feel the water, brother? It's getting cold. They're fixing to hit the iceberg. Because Kevin could see these things always from months out, but he was a wrestling guy and everybody else was smarter.
Plus he managed Oz, so they had that history together.
Well, true.
Wasn't Kevin like one of the characters on the stage? Am I remembering
Yes,
that right?
he was, and he wasn't the monkey. I think it was a real monkey. But he was I think he was a wizened old crone with a walking stick or something. So at the end of this episode, everybody's blaming Bischoff for being Hulk's stooge and puppet. And while there obviously is many elements of truth in that, it is an oversimplification because there's going to be a lot more factors at play. They still have to hire some more really incompetent people, make some truly ridiculous fucking stupid decisions, and come up with some really rotten creative before they can put this thing to bed once and for all. But over three weeks of the next 3 Tuesdays, I bet they're going to do it. Blame-a-palooza 24, folks. Who killed WCW? I say everybody.
So you didn't say anything about Dwayne Johnson being all over this thing for no good reason. And if you watch
I forgot.
And if you watch the free video on YouTube, every commercial break is brought to you by Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia. Like that name fucking matters.
Well, I was about to say, I understand why they'd say, so-and-so is brought to you by Frank Sinatra or some name that people recognize, but I don't know why they would also credit a fucking mid-card wrestler in AEW, Danny Garcia, for people know who he is.
Well, it's a little ridiculous that his ex-wife
but and also the Rock lent his thoughts and his inside knowledge of things that happened when he was in high school in a place that his family or he, neither one, were at. But he's got thoughts and he wants to share them with, and if he's writing the checks, it's like Gordon Scazzari was on his program too. Whoever's writing the checks gets to make comments.
Was he writing the checks? Is Dwayne Johnson funding this project? Is that what his production actually entails? Is that what it entails?
If it's Dwayne, doesn't the producer pay for the production?
There are all sorts of producers. That's the point. There are all sorts of kinds
maybe
of
it's Max Bialystock and he's got some old women lined up. You ever think about that?
Is Vice producing this as well? Are the Dark Side guys producers?
Well, they are co-creators, I'll have you know.
Are they producers?
Well, they're probably producing too, because they often produce. So maybe everybody's paying for it.
Is Hiram a producer?
There's another Garcia.
Is the Piss Boy a producer?
Hold on. There's another Garcia in the credits that I caught, but they go by so quick I couldn't fucking tell exactly, but it wasn't Hiram. It was another. Maybe Hiram is his nickname, or maybe there's another Garcia involved. I think Gerwitz is getting the piss. He's taking the piss. He's bringing the piss and taking the piss.
Enjoying the piss.
He's enjoying the warm feeling of the piss.
The Dark Side guys told me that when they filmed Dwayne Johnson off camera, Gortz is just like dousing piss all over himself. Just
They did not tell you that.
They told me that there's a B-roll footage making the rounds. Gortz just drinking lots of piss and just bathing in it almost.
Oh, piss boy.
Rubbing it into his skin.
Is that why he has that yellow pallor to him?
For the record, this is all not true.
We don't know.
There is no video.
That's the thing. We're speculating at best. I mean, there's no way to tell these things for sure. But
it seems likely. It
seems likely, but it's not something that we can say with 100% certainty to where we could be taken into court on it. All right, is it time to go to court yet and finish this program?
I guess so. That's the end of episode 1. I guess we'll see where we go with episode 2. But a lot, yeah, like you said, I mean, now that you brought it up, a lot of things just not mentioned. Like you think about 1990 and all the mistakes made in just 1990. Ole Anderson as Booker. I guess it's really, like you said, it's Eric Bischoff's story, this episode.
Well, I mean, George Scott as Booker in 1989 was a mistake that was followed the Jim Herd mistake, then the George Scott mistake. And when's the last time a guy got fucking 10 weeks as Booker before they said, fuck you, get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, so really you trace it all back in a way, talking about the Bookers, you trace it all back to Dusty taking the spike right after the sale to Turner.
Right, well... And see, I was the first one to get Juice on TBS after Turner bought the thing, right, with the Paul Lee deal. And that's what it does. Is I said, a little Juice kid, but nobody said anything because there was no negative feedback from fans or whatever the fuck. But then they had specifically told Dusty, no blood and something else in the way of violence, and the next week he turns the Road Warriors heel, which didn't work. They didn't want to cheer or boo the Road Warriors by getting Juice when they stab him in the eye with a metal spike. And that's why they say, all right, because he was trying to do a really hot angle and hot shot business for the new owners, but he hot shotted himself out of a job because they fuck you. They didn't realize that, well, who's going to do it? And they had nobody. And Jimmy Crockett did it for 6 weeks until Larry Matuszek was talked to at one time and turned it down. Herd didn't know what the fuck was going on. He got George Scott back because George Scott had been successful in the Carolinas 10 years previously. And then we all know what happened with George Scott. Then they fire him so quickly that they did, well, fuck it, a committee. And there's Jim Ross, and there's Eddie Gilbert, and there's Kevin Sullivan, and there's other people, and Jim Barnett, and Jim Herd. And that lasted 3 or 4 months until Flair put his foot down and said, fuck this, it's getting worse. And then he became the Booker. And it's 6 months, and by God, as we've mentioned many times, and I've proven factually with the records, he got the TV ratings back, and he got the matches and the roster at the best it was for the first 5 or 6 years of their ownership. And he got the pay-per-views back. And then Herd ran him off. And then you got another committee. And then you got Ole. And then you got fucking, I was gone, and a mixture of people from there. It was incessant, the constant change and interference. And nobody could prosper in that environment. You're making me mad all over again, Brian.
Well, I'm sorry there. Just imagine Jim Herd's hair and make yourself feel better.
How about imagine his hair on fire? That would make me feel better. Folks, I'm going to go and tickle my own taint to the thought of Jim Herd bursting into flames. But we'll be back next week on this program with more of Who Killed WCW, an inner sanctum mystery. And we'll be back on the drive-through it still sounds like the ballpark. We'll be back on the drive-through also, where Brian will play more notes on his organ. And it's always better to have tulips on your organ than roses on your piano. And in parting, I just like, Brian, any other comments?
We'll see you on the drive-thru, folks. Charge!
That's what I thought. Fat man walking down the street. Boop, doop, doop. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.